Chapter 189. The 100,000 mountains and rivers stretched as far as the eye could see, and they were continuous and endless. Suddenly, there was a violent whistling sound coming from the mountains and rivers. A black dot was rapidly approaching from afar, and it was getting bigger and bigger. It was a black goshawk, and it was extremely huge. Its feathers fluttered as it flew. The goshawk's eyes were very sharp, and they emitted a chilling light. The cry of the eagle resounded through the 9 heavens. The sound of birds flapping their wings could be heard coming from the 100,000 mountains. On the back of the eagle sat a girl wearing a warrior's robe. The girl's long hair was tied into a ponytail, making her look very capable and simple. The girl's appearance was very delicate and pretty, looking a bit shy and adorable at the same time. She carried a longbow on her back and sat on the back of the eagle. The howling wind was blocked by an invisible barrier, and the young girl was not affected in the slightest. She was happily eating a spirit fruit. Brother Condor, Master told us to go to the imperial city of the Light Wind Empire. Take your time flying, the young girl said as she lightly patted the head of the eagle with her fair palm. She smiled and continued to eat the spirit fruit in her hand. The eagle, which was soaring high in the sky, rolled its eyes in a human-like manner and sped up. The Mahayana Island was a huge island floating in a vast sea. There were many majestic buildings erected on the island. In a secret chamber of a 9-story tower, a figure was quietly sitting cross-legged. The aura on his body was constantly fluctuating, as if there was a strange fluctuation circulating around him. A faint golden true energy was lingering around his body. A golden relic was spinning, and chanting could be heard from it. It gave off a feeling of calmness and calmness. After a long while, the relic fell and floated into the hands of that person. He then put it away. During the battle at the gate of heavenly mystery, my cultivation level almost regressed. This old man can't just let go of this grudge. Bufong. Fong Fong's little store, just you wait. The person who was sitting cross-legged suddenly opened his eyes. A golden light suddenly overflowed and illuminated the entire secret chamber. Zhao Muxing's expression was solemn as he slowly stood up. Suddenly, the sound of knocking came from outside. Zhao Rouge slowly and respectfully walked in. When he saw Zhao Muxing standing with his hands behind his back, he immediately bowed. "Oh, it's Rouge. What's wrong? Is something big going to happen in the Imperial City?" When Zhao Muxing saw that the person who came was Zhao Rouge, a gentle smile immediately appeared on his face. Zhao Rouge's face was filled with excitement as he looked at his father. The ghost chef Wang Ding entered the imperial city of the Light Wind Empire, and he even went to Bufong's store. "Oh, ghost chef Wang Ding? Isn't he living in seclusion in Qingyang town?" Zhao Muxing's expression did not change. "That's right, it's the ghost chef Wang Ding who is known to have traveled all over the continent. Ji Qingxue has invited him to a banquet, and there's a very important piece of news coming out. Traverse the entire continent. Ha! This old man is still as thick-skinned as ever. Speak, what important news do you have?" Zhao Muxing curled the corner of his mouth into a disdainful smile. Zhao Rouge glanced at his father and solemnly said, "The prize for the champion of the 100 Family Banquet is a seed of the 5 Stripes Path Understanding tree, and that seed has sprouted in Bufong's restaurant." Boom! A surge of energy suddenly burst forth from Zhao Muxing's body. Zhao Rouge was struck by this frightening energy, and his entire body retreated several steps before crashing into the wall of the secret chamber. "What did you say? 5 Stripes Path Understanding tree? Is this news true or false?" Zhao Muxing's eyes were slightly widened, and he was extremely agitated. The 5 Stripes Path Understanding tree was recorded in the library of the Buddhist sect of the Mahayana Island. It was a mystical spirit tree that could allow a 7th-grade battle saint to step into the realm of 8th-grade war god. It could emit mysteries and aid in enlightenment. For any 7th-grade battle saint, it held an indescribable allure. But wasn't the 5 Stripes Path Understanding tree extinct? Why would it still appear? And in Fong Fong's little store? This news came from the Imperial Palace, and it was personally said by the ghost chef Wang Ding. It should be true. Zhao Rouge rubbed his chest to ease the tightness in his chest before speaking. Ha ha ha, even the heavens are helping me. Bufang. Oh Bufang, you won't die if you don't court death. As long as this old man spreads this news, how will your store survive the siege of so many 7th grade battle saints? Even 8th grade war gods will make a move. When that time comes, I won't even need to do anything. You'll already be finished. Zhao Mushing laughed heartily. Zhao Rouge looked at the laughing Zhao Mushing, hesitated for a moment, and finally opened his mouth to say, Father, there's a supreme beast at the entrance of Bufang's store. What supreme beast? You've heard the rumors, but have you ever seen a real supreme beast? That's a supreme existence. How could it possibly lie in front of a store like a watchdog? Maybe it's just an 8th grade spirit beast. But even if it's an 8th grade spirit beast, facing a horde of 7th grade battle saints or even 8th grade war gods, it won't be able to protect Bufang. Zhao Mushing had never believed that a supreme beast would be lying in front of the store. He had personally witnessed the might of a 9th grade supreme beast. Its might was simply earth-shattering. A mere light wind empire was like a piece of paper in front of a 9th grade supreme beast. Zhao Rouge choked, not knowing what to say. Zhao Mushing continued to laugh, turned around, and walked out of the secret chamber. I'm going to contact the elders of the other sections. Those cowardly old fellows have always refused to join hands. Now that the 5 Stripes Path Understanding Tree has appeared, let's see if they can still sit still. Early in the morning, Bufang opened the door of the store, carried a plate of fragrant sweet and sour ribs out of the store, and placed it in front of Blackie. After petting the gluttonous dog, who had become spirited after seeing the sweet and sour ribs, Bufang turned around and returned to the kitchen to start his daily business. Fatty Jean arrived in a grandiose manner with his army of fatties. As soon as he stepped into the store, he greeted Bufang and began to order his dishes. He was already familiar with the process. He had eaten almost all of the dishes in Bufang's store, yet he did not feel the slightest bit bored. This was somewhat miraculous. Perhaps it was because Bufang's culinary skills were too good. When Fatty Jean and the others left, Ouyang Xiaoyi skipped over, followed by her 3 foolish brothers. The 3 Ouyang barbarians, these 3 were rare guests. Hee, Owner Boo, I'm craving for wine today. Give me a jar of Ice Heart Jade Urn wine. Ouyang Zhun scratched his head and said to Bufang with a smile, Do you want a Lee's fish? A side dish is also pretty good. Bufang blinked his eyes and promoted his wine without batting an eyelid. However, Ouyang Wu hurriedly waved his hands. He would not fall for Bufang's tricks again. Back then, he ordered the Ice Heart Jade Urn wine and the Lee's fish. In the end, after drinking the wine, the Lee's fish was completely tasteless. What a waste of crystals. Bufang turned around with some regret. As Ouyang Xiaoyi giggled, he walked into the kitchen and took out a jar of Ice Heart Jade Urn wine. Soon, there will be a new wine. When the time comes, you guys can come over and have a taste. The taste is definitely better than the Ice Heart Jade Urn wine, Bufang seriously said to the 3 Ouyang barbarians. The 3 brothers' eyes immediately lit up. Since Owner Boo was going to release a new wine, they had to support him. The 3 brothers excitedly nodded their heads. In the Immortal Phoenix restaurant, Qian Baosheng looked at the woman in a loose robe in front of him with a despondent expression. The corner of his mouth twitched. Why the F***CK did this woman come back? Didn't she already leave the Imperial City? A long time no see. Boss Qian, you seem to be living a good life. A naughty smile hung on Enai Yan's beautiful face, making Qian Bao's hair stand on end. This woman definitely did not have good intentions when she showed such a smile. Great aunt, didn't you already leave the Imperial City? Why are you back? Qian Bao's face was almost scrunched up as he wailed. I miss Owner Boo's dishes. Can't I return to the Imperial City? Cut the crap and ask someone to empty the kitchen for me. I just learned a dish and want to ask Owner Boo for advice, Anayan said. Qian Bao was so angry. If you want to ask Owner Boo for advice, shouldn't you go directly to Owner Boo's kitchen? How can you bully people like this? Qian Bao still wanted to say something, but when he saw Enai Yan's beautiful eyes glare at him, he immediately shrank back. Thinking of this outrageously beautiful woman's terrifying cultivation, he thought, forget it, I'll endure it. You're amazing, you're awesome, I'll leave the kitchen to you. Afterward, Inayan excitedly occupied the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's kitchen. After fiddling with it for a while, she carried a lunchbox and excitedly left for Bufong's store. Tangyin did not know whether to laugh or cry as he watched his teacher leave in such a hurry. He took out a few crystals and gave them to Qianbao. After apologizing to Qianbao, he followed after Inayan. Qianbao's hands trembled as he glanced at the crystals in his hand. Then, he silently put them away and pursed his lips. It seems I didn't lose out. Chapter 190. Imperial Palace, Main Hall. After a night of revelry, the main hall once again regained its solemnity and desolation. The officials had all left, and the eunuchs had cleaned the hall until it was spotless. The original hustle and bustle had turned into a show of splendor. In the main hall, only Ji Qingxue was left sitting on the dragon throne, slightly tilting his body and rubbing his chin, deep in thought. Xiao Meng's figure slowly walked in from outside the hall. He stood in the main hall and bowed slightly to Ji Qingxue. Has the news been blocked? Ji Qingxue glanced at Xiao Meng, rubbing his eyebrows tiredly. Xiao Meng nodded and solemnly said, Your humble servant gave the order to block the news the moment the banquet ended. Now, the news about the Five Stripes Path Understanding Tree in Fong Fong's little store is basically blocked, but Ji Qingxue doubtfully looked at the hesitant Xiao Meng. Your Majesty, you should know that even though the imperial city is peaceful, and in the last war, we took the opportunity to remove the claws and teeth of many sects, but there are still many sects hidden within the imperial city. The news may still leak out, so we better take some precautions. Ji Qingxue furrowed his brows, straightened his body, and pondered for a long time before sighing. I didn't think that the old ghost chef would actually announce this news at the banquet. We really didn't expect it. When Father was still alive, he talked about this ghost chef. This old guy is shameless and often plays tricks. In the past, the imperial city held a few cooking competitions, and this person relied on a few tricks to suppress many of his opponents. I didn't expect that after so many years, this person's personality still hasn't changed. The muscles on Xiao Meng's face twitched slightly. That's true. With this old guy's personality, he must have offended many people while traveling the continent. It's a miracle that he hasn't been beaten to death. Ghost Chef, Ghost Chef. He's got the name Ghost Chef because he has so many tricks up his sleeve. Of course, his culinary skills are also very good, Ji Qingxue lightly said. I thought he was a senior, and his cultivation level was 7th grade battle saint, so I could try to rope him in. I didn't expect that he would be used by this old guy. He just came out of Owner Boo's store, so he must have suffered quite a bit. Ji Qingxue stood up and slowly walked down from the throne. He walked into the main hall and stretched his body. He pretended to spread the news casually to mess with Fong Fong's little store. When the time comes, the store will be surrounded by a group of battle saints, and this old man can shamelessly fish in troubled waters. He must have done this many times. Xiao Meng nodded, but the expression on his face was a little strange. He knew that Ji Qingxue must have thought of it as well. But this old man is really stupid. Maybe he doesn't even know the ins and outs of Fong Fong's little store. He definitely didn't investigate before entering the store. The corners of Ji Qingxue's mouth curled up involuntarily. He walked to the entrance of the Great Hall and looked at the heavy snowflakes drifting down from the sky. Not to mention a group of 7th grade battle saints. Even if an 8th grade war god came, Honorable wouldn't even bat an eyelid. If he wants to fish in troubled waters, I'm afraid he'll be scared out of his wits. Ji Qingxue seemed to have thought of an interesting scene and could not help but chuckle. However, Xiao Meng was not as optimistic as him. He could not help but say, Your Majesty, what you should worry about now is not Onerbu's store, but our imperial city. A large group of 7th grade battle saints is pouring into the imperial city. Of course, Onerbu is not afraid, but I really want to give that old man a good beating. No, it's all my fault. I got myself into trouble. The expression on Ji Qingshue's face suddenly froze. He clenched his teeth and could not help but curse inwardly. General Xiao passed down the order. Strengthen the imperial city's defense. In addition, strengthen the inspection of people entering the imperial city. If you find anyone suspicious, immediately report to me. When the time comes, the order of the imperial city may have to trouble General Xiao. Xiao Ming cupped his hands in salute. The corners of his mouth could not help but reveal a trace of bitterness. A group of 7th-grade battle saints would be a headache. That damned old man. Bu Fong expressionlessly looked at the outrageously beautiful woman in front of him. She was holding a lunchbox and leaning against the counter. She was blinking her eyes as she gazed at him. Is this still flirting? Bu Fong thought. Owner Bu, long time no see. Did you miss me? And Ai Yin asked while clenching her teeth in anger when she saw Bu Fong was too lazy to pay attention to her blinking eyes. Instead, he turned around and was about to enter the kitchen. Why would I miss you? You don't owe me crystals, Bu Fong seriously said. And Ai Yin's face stiffened. Is there only crystals in your head? Tang Yin hurried over and happened to see Bu Fong. He immediately greeted Bu Fong excitedly. Senior, long time no see. Bu Fong nodded at Tang Yin and lightly said, Long time no see. Do you want to come in for a meal? My store has a new dish recently. It tastes pretty good. Tang Yin's face immediately lit up. A new dish? That's great. Senior's culinary skills are undeniable. Tang Yin, who had just taken a step forward, suddenly froze. He glanced at an Ai Yin, who was holding a lunchbox and glaring at him with her teeth clenched. Owner Bu, this is the spirit energy dish I just cooked. Please advise me. And Ai Yin angrily stepped into the store and placed the lunchbox on the table. She snapped at Bu Fong. As expected, this woman was here to ask for advice. To be honest, Bu Fong was really not interested in this kind of advice. After looking around and realizing that there were actually no customers, Bu Fong immediately furrowed his brows. Suddenly, Bu Fong looked at Tang Yin and asked, What do you want to eat? Tang Yin was startled and hurriedly replied, Oh, a new dish and a jar of ice-hard jade, urn wine. All right, please wait a moment. Bu Fong nodded his head in satisfaction. Then, he turned around and walked toward the kitchen. We are currently open for business hours. We are not accepting any advice. Please wait until business hours are over, Bu Fong said as he walked. And Ai Yin was immediately speechless. Tang Yin was also drenched in cold sweat. Senior, you can't trick people like this. As expected, and Ai Yin's gaze toward him was somewhat cold. Little girl, I want to order as well. Give me a red braised meat and a jar of wine. And Ai Yin sat on a stool and waved her hand at the bored Ouyang Xiaoyi who was sitting nearby. Ouyang Xiaoyi snorted. She did not have much of a favorable impression of this woman. However, since the other party was here to order dishes, she could not refuse. Thus, she walked to the window and reported the dishes to Bu Fong. While waiting for the dishes to be served, Ai Yin began to look around the store. This time, when she stepped into the store, she felt a little different from before. There was a mysterious feeling lingering in her heart. This kind of mysterious feeling would only appear during cultivation and would rarely appear during normal times. Ai Yin searched the store for a while with her hands behind her back. She saw an unremarkable yellow flower pot in the corner of the wall. Within the flower pot, there was a small sapling quietly swaying. The tender green leaves were covered with mysterious vein patterns. This is the path understanding tree. Ai Yin was stunned. She did not expect Bu Fong to plant a path understanding tree in the store. Of course, she knew about the path understanding tree because there was also one in the Celestial Arcanum sect. Under normal circumstances, the path understanding tree was divided into several types: 1 vein, 3 vein, and 5 vein. In the ancient books, there were records of the path understanding tree with even more vein patterns. However, those path understanding trees basically only existed in legends. The path understanding tree in the Celestial Arcanum sect was hundreds of years old. Its leaves were incomparably bold and vigorous. As it swayed, it would emit extremely mysterious waves. The The Celestial Arcanum sect disciples would often sit cross-legged in front of the path understanding tree to cultivate. This way, they would have a higher chance of breaking through the shackles. 5 vein. This leaf has 5 vein patterns. Is this the 5 stripes path understanding tree? And Yin counted the vein patterns on the leaves. Her devastatingly beautiful eyes suddenly widened and were filled with disbelief. Oh my God, how magical! There was actually a 5 stripes path understanding tree in the store. No wonder there was such a mysterious feeling. This was the first time she had seen a living 5 stripes path understanding tree. Could this be the opportunity that the Supreme Elder mentioned? And Yan's mind seemed to have a flash of inspiration and her heart thumped. Once the 5 stripes path understanding tree bore fruit, it would be the 5 stripes path understanding fruit. That was a spirit fruit that could give one the opportunity to gain enlightenment and break through to the 8th grade war god realm after consuming it. Just as Yin was in a daze, Bufong had already finished cooking and slowly walked out of the kitchen. New dish, rainbow water dumplings. Please enjoy. Bufong placed the rainbow water dumplings in front of Tang Yin. Ouyang Xiaoyi followed behind him and eagerly carried a jar of ice heart jade urn wine and placed it in front of Tang Yin. Thank you, Elder. Tang Yin expressed his gratitude politely. Owner Bu, you actually planted a 5 stripes path understanding tree in the store? You are really bold. And Yin turned her head and called out to Bufong, who was about to enter the kitchen again. She spoke word by word. Chapter 191. You said this tree is called the 5 stripes path understanding tree? Bufong looked at Yin and asked, Don't tell me you don't even know the name of this tree? Yin widened her beautiful eyes, her face full of astonishment. Her cherry lips were round, rosy and glossy, extremely adorable. If you don't even know the name of this tree, why would you plant this tree in the store? Bufong twitched the corner of his mouth. I just wanted to increase the greenery of the store. Bufong's expression was very calm, but Yin was a little speechless. Do you know how precious the 5 stripes path understanding tree is? Increasing the greenery of the store. My boss is awesome. Perhaps only a weirdo like Bufong would simply plant a 5 stripes path understanding tree for the sake of the store's greenery. I have a 3 stripes path understanding fruit. Could it be that these two are related? Bufong asked doubtfully. This was the first time he heard the name of this sapling. That old man yesterday. Even though he seemed to know the name of this sapling, he could tell that the other party's intentions were not pure. He actually wanted this sapling. Damn it. This was the greenery of his store. This tree is called the 5 stripes path understanding tree, so the fruit it bears is naturally called the 5 stripes path understanding fruit. It is not something that the 3 stripes path understanding fruit can compare to. The two are simply not on the same level, and Yin said with a snort. The 3 stripes path understanding fruit can at most increase the probability of a 6th grade battle emperor advancing to 7th grade battle saint. But the 5 stripes path understanding fruit can increase the probability of a 7th grade battle saint advancing to 8th grade war god. The value of the two is as different as heaven and earth. Bufong was dumbfounded. It seemed that this sapling was not ordinary. If anyone were to find out that your store has this 5 stripes path understanding tree, it won't be long before your store is surrounded by a bunch of deranged 7th grade battle saints, and Yin said. Oh, it's fine. Bufong simply replied. And Yin was dumbfounded. Why are you so calm? A group of 7th grade battle saints, not a group of 1st grade warriors. Big brother, can we be a little more serious? Since he knew the name of this small tree, Bufong no longer questioned Yin. Under the latter's dumbstruck gaze, he directly turned around and entered the kitchen. And Yin was a little speechless. Perhaps Bufong was truly fearless. However, a group of 7th grade battle saints. Just the thought of it was terrifying. Reluctantly glancing at the 5 stripes path understanding tree, and Yin returned to her seat. Not long after, the rich aroma of meat wafted out of the kitchen as a plate of red braised meat was carried out. When it came to food, Yin's reluctance to part with the 5 stripes path understanding tree was instantly thrown out of her mind. All that was left in her eyes was the glowing red braised meat. Pouring himself a cup of ice-hard jade-urn wine, he ate the meat and drank the wine at the same time. The taste was extremely refreshing. The only flaw was that this ice-hard jade-urn wine couldn't compare to the old drunkard's dragon's breath. If it could be changed to dragon's breath, it would be even more perfect. Just as Yin and the others were seriously eating the delicacies, a series of footsteps came from the alley. Xiaoming straightened his back and walked into the store with large strides. Uncle Xiao, Ouyang Xiaoyi, greeted him charmingly. Her eyes were filled with doubt. Why would Xiaoming be here? He was truly a rare guest. Where's owner Bu? Xiaoming nodded at Ouyang Xiaoyi and asked. Ouyang Xiaoyi pointed to the kitchen. Xiaoming didn't speak anymore. He found a seat near the five stripes path understanding tree and sat down, observing it from a close distance. Uncle Xiao, what would you like to eat? Ouyang Xiaoyi asked. A jar of ice-heart jade, urn wine. Xiaoming's gaze still fell on the path understanding tree as he casually said, Uncle Xiao, the 3 jars of ice-heart jade urn wine have all been sold for today. Xiaoming was taken aback. He lifted his head and glanced at Ouyang Xiaoyi, then at Yin, who was drinking wine and eating meat in the distance. His pupils suddenly shrank. The people from the Celestial Arcanum sect had arrived so quickly. Xiaoming took a deep breath and ordered a serving of rainbow water dumplings. Yin seemed to feel that someone was observing her. She immediately lifted her head and glanced at Xiaoming. She couldn't be bothered with him and continued eating. The second 7th grade battle saint. Xiaoming thought to himself. The 3rd elder of the Celestial Arcanum sect was a 7th grade battle saint, together with the ghost chef Wang Ding, who was also a 7th grade battle saint. The number of 7th grade battle saints in the Imperial City was constantly increasing. Bu Fong carried the rainbow water dumplings out of the kitchen. Xiaoming only gave Bu Fong a deep look and didn't say a word. He didn't ask for any information regarding the 5 stripes path understanding tree. After finishing his meal, Xiaoming quickly left. Yin, on the other hand, pestered Bu Fong to bring out her dish to ask for advice. The result was needless to say. She was cruelly criticized by Bu Fong. Once Bu Fong switched on his commenting mode, he would turn into a chatterbox. Words would constantly jump out of his mouth, listing out all the flaws of the dish in detail. In the end, Yin angrily dragged the food container and left with Tang Yin. Bu Fong watched as the two of them left and calmly stood at the door. He looked at the snow falling from the sky and let out a soft sigh. Time flew by quickly. The temperature in the Imperial City had begun to show signs of warming up. The snowflakes in the sky had lessened, and the warmth of the sun could be felt occasionally. The howling cold wind had also become much gentler. Even though it still felt like a knife was cutting one's face, it was not as bone-piercing as it was in the depths of winter. The Imperial City hadn't changed much in this 1 month. The only difference was that the number of guards in the city had increased, and the armored guards had also become more and more serious. Many strangers had entered the Imperial City. These people were travel-worn people who had rushed over from all over the Light Wind Empire. Every one of them had an extremely powerful aura, and most of them were around 5th grade battle kings and 6th grade battle emperors. The influx of these experts had also increased the pressure on the guards of the Imperial City. As the commander of the guards, Xiaoming also felt deeply worried. Xiao Mansion, study. Xiao Yu leaned against the door frame and played with the sharp longsword in his hand. He used a hoarse voice to say to Xiaoming, who was sitting in front of the study table and reading a secret report. According to reliable sources, the Liu family's ancestor overseeing the Jade State City has already arrived at the Imperial City last night. He fought with the 13 bandits of Mazhou outside the Imperial City. The Liu family's ancestor, that 7th grade battle saint who has 1 foot in the grave? Xiaoming put down the secret report in his hand, rubbed his eyes, and calmly said, Oh, that's right. Even though the cultivation level of the 13 bandits isn't bad, they can still suppress the Liu family's ancestor if they join forces. Xiao Yu lightly flicked the long sword in his hand. Immediately, the crisp sound of the sword resounded throughout the entire study. With 1 foot in the grave, his condition is no longer at his peak. The current Liu family's ancestor is perhaps only slightly stronger than an ordinary peak 6th grade battle emperor. It's normal for him to be suppressed by the 13 bandits. Are there any other suspicious circumstances? Xiao Meng asked. The Void Sword Pavilion's ancestor seems to have come out of seclusion. This is the news I just received. I don't dare to confirm it, but the possibility is very high, Xiao Yu solemnly said. The Void Sword Pavilion's ancestor. Xiao Meng pondered for a moment. This was a veteran 7th grade battle saint. When he was young, he was all-powerful. However, he seemed to have gone berserk due to cultivation, and everyone thought he had fallen. No one expected him to come out of seclusion again. This Void Sword Pavilion's ancestor was one of the few remaining battle saint ancestors in sects other than the Celestial Arcanum sect. If we include this ancestor, he should be the 15th battle saint that we know of, right? Xiao Yu is also speechless. 7th grade battle saints. It was fine if they didn't come out, but once they did, there were actually so many of them. It was as if all the 7th grade battle saints in the Light Wind Empire had gathered here. In the current Imperial City, no matter who you met on the streets, you wouldn't dare to be too arrogant because the other party might be a 6th grade battle emperor. Originally, some of the hedonistic sons of the Imperial City seemed to have learned their lesson after suffering a few big losses. Recently, they all shut themselves in their houses. All right, you continue to scout for information. Once there's any news of a 7th grade battle saint, inform me immediately, Xiao Meng said to Xiao Yu. Then, he stood up and let out a long sigh. Xiao Yu nodded. The tip of his foot lightly touched the ground. Instantly, like a flash of sword light, he disappeared. In a luxurious manner within the Imperial City, the ghost chef Wang Ding sat in front of a table. On the table, there were a few dishes personally cooked by him and a small pot of wine, which he poured and drank by himself. After finishing the wine in the cup in one gulp, the ghost chef Wang Ding's wrinkled face suddenly trembled. It's been a month. There are more and more powerful auras within the Imperial City. As I expected, once the news of the 5 Stripes Path Understanding Tree comes out, no 7th grade battle saint will sit still. However, I don't know how long it will take for the 5 Stripes Path Understanding Tree to grow, but it should be soon. Since that little store can speed up the growth of the Path Understanding Tree, it shouldn't be too long before it matures. Slowly pouring himself a cup of wine, the ghost chef gazed at the slightly murky wine, and the corners of his mouth suddenly curled up. The fish are already here, but the water isn't murky enough. Chapter 192. Outside the imperial capital, a group of people and horses slowly approached. The sound of rolling wheels echoed in this silent world. Among this group of people, a strong aura rose and fell. Everyone was in high spirits, and their eyes seemed to be shining brightly. Among this group of people, there was a huge cage with 3 figures inside. If Bufong was here, he would definitely recognize these 3 figures because they were too special. Unlike ordinary humans, the lower bodies of these 3 figures were wriggling like long snakes. Brother Ai, is this the imperial city of the Light Wind Empire? A timid voice sounded from within the cage. The serpent man, who was covered in wounds, gently twisted his body and immediately let out a series of hissing sounds. From the conversation of those fellows, we should have arrived. Ani's strong upper body was covered in wounds. His aura was a little weak, but he still forced a smile and said. Yufu nodded and glanced at her father, Yufeng, who was lying beside her with his eyes closed. She couldn't help but let out a sigh. Even though we should reach the imperial city of the Light Wind Empire in half a month if we rush from the Serpent Men tribe, this is only in theory. Uncle Yufeng already knew that it was impossible to reach in half a month, so he sealed off all the energy in his body and entered into a state of hibernation. Uncle Yufeng is fine. Yufu, don't worry. And I comforted her. Yufu nodded. She naturally knew the reason why her father entered such a state of hibernation. I straightened his body and looked out through the gap in the steel cage. He saw the majestic city walls and the huge city gates of the imperial city. It really is much more magnificent than our tribe. There is simply no way to compare. The creativity of humans is really amazing. Just as I was sighing with emotion, the cage was suddenly struck fiercely, emitting a violent shaking sound. "What are you blabbering about? Be quiet." An impatient voice came from outside the cage. Ani's face immediately turned red, and he clenched his fists. However, after a while, he slumped back down. When the three of them came out of the illusory spirit swamp and entered the borders of the Light Wind Empire, they encountered this group of people. Originally, I had nothing to fear because he was a 6th grade battle emperor. However, there was actually a 7th grade battle saint in this small group of people. At that time, I was dumbfounded. Against a 7th grade battle saint, he was naturally suppressed. Uncle Euphone was in a state of hibernation, so the three of them were locked in a cage and escorted all the way to the Imperial City. However, I was glad that the destination of this group of people was the Imperial capital. If it was any other place, it would have completely delayed Uncle Euphone. Rumble. The ground trembled, and Ani's pupil shrank. He looked to the left and saw a giant spirit beast galloping toward him. It was a fiery red lion, with ferocious fangs as sharp as swords. 7th grade spirit beast. Fire lion. Ani's pupil shrank. The group that had imprisoned them also let out a clamor. The fire lion let out a thunderous roar, causing the spirit beasts and horses in the convoy to become restless and frightened. "We have finally arrived at the Imperial City of the Light Wind Empire. It's all your fault for being so playful. If we had set off earlier, we would have arrived a long time ago." A somewhat helpless voice sounded from behind the fire lion. A delicate and handsome figure in a red robe appeared. A series of heavy footsteps faded away. The fire lion carried the man in the red robe on its back and directly entered the Imperial City. What a terrifying combination. A 7th grade battle saint and a 7th grade spirit beast. It was simply terrifying. Could it be that battle saints were everywhere in the Imperial City of the Light Wind Empire? Ani's mind was in a mess. Someone from the Imperial Beast Hall of the 3 godly temples of the Wildlands? As expected, they are powerful. An old and hoarse voice sounded. I recognized that this was the 7th grade battle saint who had injured him in the convoy. He seemed to be called Tion Shuzi or something. His sword intent was astonishing. A single sword intent was enough to suppress I to the point where he could hardly breathe. The resonant cry of a goshawk resounded. Everyone subconsciously raised their heads and felt as if the sky was covered. An incomparably huge goshawk spread its wings and hovered above the crowd. A figure leaped down from the back of the goshawk and landed in front of the convoy, once again causing the spirit beasts and horses in the convoy to become restless. It was a young girl with a slender figure. Her hair was tied up in a ponytail, and she wore a warrior's robe with a longbow strapped to her back. The young girl looked around in a daze, as if she had lost her sense of direction. After a long while, she seemed to recall something and waved her hand toward the huge goshawk in the sky. "Brother Eagle, take your time in the sky. I'll call you when I have to go back." With a resonant cry, the eyes of the goshawk immediately rolled. With a flap of its wings, a gust of wind rose, and it directly soared into the clouds. The young girl smiled shyly and glanced at the convoy behind her. She gave the convoy a slight nod and skipped toward the Imperial City. I did not even dare to breathe loudly. Damn it, another 7th grade spirit beast and a 7th grade battle saint. Furthermore, they were all so young. This Imperial City was truly terrifying. 7th grade spirit beast, devilish tempest hawk. This young girl's background is not simple. The aged voice rang out once more. I could hear a slight tremble in it. Apparently, this old man was also frightened. "Brother I, we've arrived at the Imperial City. Can I wake Father up now?" Yu Fu asked. I was slightly taken aback, and the corners of his mouth twitched. Damn it, they also had a 7th grade battle saint here. The number of 7th grade battle saints I had seen today was more than what he had seen in the past 10 years. As expected, the world was so big. He had to come out and take a look. Otherwise, how would he know how insignificant he was? Wake him up. Otherwise, we won't be able to walk out of this convoy. I smiled bitterly. Yu Fu's eyes slightly brightened. Then, she took out a spirit herb, tore it into pieces, and stuffed it into Serpent Man Yu Feng's mouth. Report. General, several 7th-grade battle saints have entered the Imperial City. Report. General Xiao, a 7th-grade battle saint, riding a 7th-grade spirit beast, entered the Imperial City. Report. General Xiao, a battle saint from a foreign tribe, is fighting with a human battle saint at the gate of the Imperial City. Xiao Meng listened to the reports of the soldiers with a headache. He couldn't help but pat his own face. Within a month, the number of battle saints in the Imperial City was so numerous that it made Xiao Meng's heart tremble. He had no idea where these battle saints came from. Your Majesty, oh, Your Majesty, your humble servant is also unsure. Xiao Meng smiled bitterly. For the sake of the security of the Imperial City, Ji Qingxue even specially went to the Imperial Mausoleum and invited eunuch Lianfu back. However, even with 2 battle saints keeping watch, it was still uncertain. The waters of the Imperial City were getting murkier and murkier. Bu Fong opened the store and placed the sweet and sour ribs in front of Blackie before returning to the kitchen. He was rather excited today. According to his calculations, the spirit wine that was being brewed in the cupboard should be ready in a month's time. A spirit wine brewed with 3 types of 7th-grade spirit herbs. Even he was looking forward to it. However, he was not in a hurry. He continued to practice his cutting and carving skills. After such a long period of practice, his cutting and carving skills had improved a lot. After he finished practicing his cutting and carving skills, the sound of footsteps came from outside the door. Fatty Jean and his army of fatties had arrived as scheduled. The daily business started once again. After Fatty Jean came the cheerful Ouyang Xiaoyi and Wan Er, who had not been seen for a long time, carrying a lunchbox. Luo Sanyang followed behind the 2 of them with a heroic spirit as they walked toward the store. Honorbu, long time no see. Wan Er and I are here again. This time, Wan Er's egg tarts will definitely conquer you. Luo Sanyang shouted loudly the moment she entered the store. She was full of confidence. Bu Fong slowly walked out of the kitchen. He calmly glanced at the woman and did not say anything. After Fatty Jean and the others finished eating, they bid farewell to Bu Fong. Bu Fong gave them a slight nod. After they all left, Bu Fong looked at Wan Er and said, "This is your last chance. Are you sure your egg tarts can meet my standards and requirements?" Wan Er held the lunchbox with a determined and confident look on her face. She nodded her head. Ouyang Xiaoyi and Luo Sanyang also curiously came over. Luo Sanyang had personally tasted Wan Er's egg tarts and was completely conquered. If these egg tarts could not meet Bu Fong's expectations, then Luo Sanyang was certain that owner Bu was up to no good. Wan Er slowly opened the lunchbox and revealed the golden egg tarts inside. She carefully took them out and placed them in front of Bu Fong. A rich, milky aroma wafted out, causing Bu Fong's eyes to slightly light up. Da-da-da. Just as Bu Fong picked up the egg tarts and was about to taste them, a clamor of footsteps came from the alleyway, followed by disdainful and mocking laughter. The 5 stripes path understanding tree is in this little store in this remote corner. I can smash a piece of this remote store to pieces with one hand. Chapter 193. Zhao Mushing wore a large cloak and stepped on the solid bricks of the Imperial City. He raised his head and curled the corners of his mouth. After leaving the Imperial City for a few months, he still missed the atmosphere here. After all, he had stayed in the Imperial City for a long time, so long that he almost thought he was a citizen of the Imperial City. Both sides of the street were still bustling, but compared to before, the security in the Imperial City was much tighter. Armored warriors could be seen hurrying by. On the main road of the Imperial City, there were more people dressed in strange outfits. There were also more people with powerful auras than before. Zhao Mushing knew that these people were here for the 5 stripes path understanding tree. Once the news spread, it attracted not only 7th-grade battle saints, but also 6th-grade battle emperors and 5th-grade battle kings, who were blinded by the benefits, gathered in the imperial city of the Light Wind Empire from other places without a second thought. Zhao Mushing only had one attitude towards this. The more the better, the more muddied the waters of the imperial city, the better. Otherwise, how could some people fish in troubled waters? And how could some people quietly stir up trouble? Suddenly, Zhao Mushing stood still and looked at the three figures in the distance with gentle eyes. The surrounding people looked at the three figures strangely, extremely surprised and full of curiosity. Serpent Men Tribe, Zhao Mushing murmured curiously. The Serpent Men Tribe was located in the illusory Spirit Swamp, and the journey from the illusory Spirit Swamp to here was not short. What were these Serpent Men doing here with no reward? Could it be for the Five Stripes Path Understanding Tree as well? Among these three Serpent Men, two of them looked quite miserable. Their auras were weak, and their bodies were soaked in blood. The scales on their lower bodies were torn open, looking hideous and frightening. The Serpent Woman girl supported these two people, her face full of panic as she stood helplessly on the street. Interesting. Zhao Mushing curled the corner of his mouth and strode toward the three Serpent Men. That unrestrained and arrogant words echoed in the alleyway and immediately reached Bu Fong's ears. Everyone in the store was slightly stunned, smashing a small store with one hand. Who could be so awesome? Luo Sanyang was shocked. Luo Sanyang clicked her tongue in shock. She had seen how terrifying Bu Fong's restaurant was. How strong was the person who dared to say such nonsense? When Bu Fong heard this, he was only slightly taken aback. Then, he continued to calmly grab the egg tarts made by Wan Air. The egg tart had a rich, milky aroma, and its fluffy appearance was extremely cute. Just from its appearance alone, it had already met Bu Fong's expectations. Owner Bu, someone's here to cause trouble. Aren't you going to do something about it? Luo Sanyang couldn't help but remind Bu Fong, who seemed to be planning to continue tasting the egg tarts. Although she also felt that the group of people who were talking nonsense outside might be a little funny, Owner Bu didn't even go out to take a look. Wasn't that a little too impolite? A series of footsteps rang out, and several figures had already blocked the entrance of the store. These figures were wearing the same clothes, and the aura on their bodies was extremely powerful. The leader was a fierce-looking man with a large machete on his shoulder. Oh, it really is a small store? Who's the manager? Come out. The fierce-looking man shouted domineeringly. Then, the store became quiet and peaceful, and no one paid any attention to the man. He felt as if a bunch of crows were smacking their lips as they flew past his head. It was so embarrassing. The man's eyebrows immediately twitched, and the machete fiercely slammed into the ground. The sound of metal clashing resounded, and sparks flew everywhere. Damn it! Are you deaf? I am the 7th bandit of the 13 bandits of Mazhou. If you know what's good for you, hurry up and come out. Otherwise, I will turn your store into a pile of rubble, the man shouted at the top of his lungs. A gust of wind blew past, but still, no one responded. Oh, the big black dog lying in front of the door seemed to have moved a little. It extended its paw and licked it. It glanced at the man, then continued to lie there. Preposterous. You are simply looking down on me, the 7th master. The 7th master angrily glared at the man, shouldered his machete, and strode toward the store. Behind him, a group of lackeys also followed with their heads held high. Following the 7th master would give them meat to eat. This was their experience. Bu Fong took a bite of the egg tart. The soft texture teased his taste buds, and the rich, milky fragrance accompanied by the egg fragrance instantly filled his mouth. As he chewed, the fragrance burst forth. Where's the owner of the store? Damn it! How dare you ignore me? The 7th master glared at the man as he stepped into the store. He angrily roared and panted heavily. The people in the store looked at him in astonishment. They blinked their eyes, and the scene became a little awkward. Bu Fong took another bite of the egg tart, nodding as he ate. He had to admit that Wan Air's egg tart this time around had already met his expectations. After all, she had spent a month researching and making it. This fully demonstrated Wan Air's love for egg tart making. Letting out a light breath, Bufong looked toward Wan Air and calmly said, "The taste is not bad. Even though there are still many flaws, it has already met my expectations. Later, I will tell you the things you need to pay attention to when making the egg tart." "Hey, Xiaobai face, don't you King know I am here?" The seventh master waved his machete, bringing up a gust of wind as he pointed it at Bufong. The 13 bandits of Majo, each of them had a strong cultivation level. Each of them had reached the peak of 6th grade Battle Emperor. In Majo, they were tyrannical overlords. This time, the 13 brothers had come to the Imperial City for the 5 Stripes Path Understanding Tree. If they had the 5 Stripes Path Understanding Tree, the difficulty of the 13 brothers stepping in a 7th grade Battle Saint would be greatly reduced. At that time, the 13 Battle Saints would become the supreme existence in Majo, and even look down on the entire Light Wind Empire. Bufong put down the egg tart in his hand and calmly looked at the 7th master, who was holding the machete. "If you want to order, look at the menu behind you," Bufong said expressionlessly. The 7th master's face stiffened. Then he suddenly burst into laughter. He looked at Bufong as if he was looking at an idiot. "You brat, are you freaking scared out of your wits? Do I look like I'm here to eat in your store? Ha! I'm here for the 5 Stripes Path Understanding Tree. Don't you King play the fool in front of me." The 7th master glared at him with a somewhat ferocious look. Wan Air, who was behind Bufong, was frightened by this ugly look, and her face turned pale. Luo Sanyang, on the other hand, twitched her mouth and comforted Wan Air, secretly cursing this 7th master for being an idiot. Bufong's expression was also extremely strange. In the past month, this was the first time he had seen someone so arrogant as to stand in front of him and demand to hand over the 5 Stripes Path Understanding Tree. It seemed like the storm that had been silently brewing for a month was finally about to erupt. However, Bufong sized up this 7th master and realized that he was only a 6th grade Battle Emperor. Where was the promised Battle Saint? "If you're not ordering, then scram." Bufong was too lazy to say anything else. He turned around and gave an indifferent reply, intending to head for the kitchen. "If you're not ordering, then scram?" Huh? This Xiao Bai's face was actually so savage. How many years had it been since someone dared to speak to him, the 7th master, in such a manner? A few days ago, that old man Lu had offended the 13 brothers and was ganged up on. This Xiao Bai's face. Was he courting death? The 7th master's ferocious face twitched. He strode out with large strides, his hand reaching out to grab Bufong. For someone even more arrogant than him, if he didn't give him a good beating, he would never be able to calm down. "You still dare to act tough in front of me, a 7th master? You're courting death." Luo Sanyang saw that the 7th master had actually made the first move. Her eyes widened, and she was about to retaliate. However, before she could release her true energy, she felt a gust of wind whistling past. Bang! The 7th master's claw was blocked by a giant mechanical lump. Bufong halted his steps. Without turning around, he calmly said, "Xiao Bai, strip him and throw him out." Xiao Bai stuck out his fat belly, his mechanical eyes flashing red. He mechanically said, "Troublemaker, you will be stripped as an example to others." The 7th master's mouth twitched. What the hell? What the hell was this mechanical lump? "Strip your grandmother. Go to hell." The 7th master's eyes widened, his face filled with ferocity. He suddenly raised the huge machete in his hand and ruthlessly chopped at Xiao Bai's round mechanical head. Ding! A crisp sound of a collision reverberated within the store. The 7th master's entire body suddenly trembled, and his face stiffened. He blinked his eyes, and the ferocity on his face disappeared like flowing water. The huge machete that was chopping at the mechanical lump's head suddenly bent, and a large chunk of the blade was chipped off. Xiao Bai's round head was still adorably white, without a single scar. "Troublemaker, you will be stripped as an example to others," Xiao Bai mechanically said. The red glow in his eyes flashed across the 7th master's face. Chapter 194. The 7th master's ferocious face was trembling. His mouth was opened so wide that a large tomato could be stuffed inside. His machete, that big machete made of fine iron, actually bent. Just how hard was this puppet in front of him? His cleaver actually made so many notches, and most importantly, it was bent. The flash of red light on his face made him feel a little guilty. However, he quickly regained his ferocious expression. He bared his teeth at Xiao Bai for a while, and with a clang, threw the bent cleaver aside. "Damn it! You think you're awesome? You're tough, aren't you?" With a ripping sound, the seventh master tore the clothes on his upper body, revealing his strong muscles. Veins densely covered them like dragons, and the wounds that resembled centipedes were even more ghastly. The seventh master punched his own chest, making a muffled sound, and roared at Xiao Bai, Your father survived by licking the scars of knives in that barbaric land of Majo. Why would I be afraid of a lump of iron?" Boom! As he roared, the true energy on the seventh master's body also burst forth. His true energy was extremely swift and fierce. Like a howling gale, it formed a storm around his body. "Die for your father!" The seventh master roared, his whole body trembling. He raised his fist and smashed it straight at Xiao Bai, who was standing motionless in the same place. The power of this punch was extremely frightening. Even the air was torn apart, emitting a whistling sound. This was a punch that gathered all of the seventh master's essence, energy, and spirit. Although it looked simple, it contained many tricks. Within this punch, there was a martial technique. The circulation and application of true energy were all traceable. Once it hit, an extremely terrifying explosion would occur. This was the special martial technique of the 13 bandits of Majo, the exploding fist. When Luo Sanyang felt the power contained in this punch, her expression changed greatly. This punch actually gave her a feeling of invincibility. It was simply frightening. One had to know that she was also a 6th grade battle emperor, and there was actually an existence that could make her lose the courage to resist at the same level. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes were still flickering, the red light flickering. In the face of this punch, he actually did not dodge or evade. "You're courting death." The seventh master's face turned ferocious as he punched out. Bang! With a loud bang, Master Seven's punch landed on Xiao Bai's chubby belly without any reservation. His stomach caved in, and the corners of Master Seven's mouth curled up slightly. He spat out a word, "Explode." Boom! A loud explosion rang out, causing everyone to cover their ears involuntarily. Their minds were shaken as the thunderous explosion caused their bodies to tremble. The seventh master took 2 steps back and couldn't help but laugh. "Damn it! A lump of iron dares to act tough in front of me? Today, I'll let you know how powerful I am." Bufong walked to the entrance of the kitchen. When he heard the ear-piercing laughter, his brows immediately furrowed. He slowly turned around and glanced at the seventh master, who was laughing with his head raised, and lightly said, "Whitey, stop playing. Just throw it out. It's annoying to watch." A series of mechanical sounds rang out. Xiao Bai's mechanical head slightly lowered, and the red light in his mechanical eyes locked onto the seventh master. Xiao Bai's caved-in belly also slowly recovered under the seventh master's widened gaze. Boom! Suddenly, Xiao Bai's palm landed on the seventh master's body. The seventh master instantly felt a huge pressure, and his whole body directly knelt on the ground. His knees seemed to have collapsed, and his face was full of pain. Rip! The crisp sound of cloth ripping rang out. The seventh master felt a cold wind suddenly coming from his lower body, and a huge force suddenly slammed onto his body. Poochie! The seventh master's whole body drew a perfect parabola and fell into the alley. All the clothes on his body disappeared. Spitting out a mouthful of blood, the seventh master was ashamed and angry. He covered his lower body and felt a wave of coldness. The cold wind whistled past, and there was a kind of sadness in his balls. The seventh master's lackeys were dumbstruck as they watched the naked seventh master fly over their heads and land in the distance. In their hearts, it was as if there were 10,000 big black dogs running past. Rip, rip, troublemakers, you will be stripped as an example to others. Xiao Bai said mechanically. He held one of his lackeys in each hand, and in an instant, the group of lackeys drew a beautiful arc and landed in the cold alley. Each of them covered their lower bodies and stood up, trembling, with faces full of grief and indignation. Wan Er blushed as she covered her eyes and spat lightly. Ouyang Xiaoi, on the other hand, covered her eyes, but the gaps between her fingers were wide open. She stared with her eyes wide open, and her face was full of excitement. Luo Sanyang was even more direct. She smacked her lips, licked her lips, and slightly narrowed her eyes. The seventh master felt a little suffocated in his chest. Why? That iron lump was hit by his exploding fist, but why was it completely fine? This didn't make sense. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes swept across them, and he took a step forward. The seventh master and the others were instantly startled. They covered their lower bodies and shouted fiercely, You guys have guts. Just you wait. When my 12 brothers come, I'll smash your little store to pieces. The seventh master threw down a harsh sentence, turned around, and ran away. It was simply too embarrassing. The seventh master, one of the 13 bandits of Majo, was actually stripped naked and ran naked in the street. This was simply something that would make everyone laugh their heads off. Luo Sanyang leaned on Xiao Bai's chubby body and commented on the seventh master's white buttocks, which were swaying nonstop from running wildly. Pung pung. Xiao Bai did a good job. This sister likes your simple and unpretentious stripping. Luo Sanyang patted Xiao Bai's body and said with a smile. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes turned and fell on Luo Sanyang. The latter's heart instantly skipped a beat, and she hurriedly distanced herself. What a joke. This iron lump was a terrifying existence that would strip people's clothes at the slightest disagreement. Xiao Bai quickly returned to the kitchen and did not appear again. Bu Fong, on the other hand, walked out with a porcelain plate. On top of the plate, there was a golden egg tart that was overflowing with a rich fragrance. All right, let's talk about the things to take note of when making an egg tart. Bu Fong's face was calm, as if nothing had happened just now, and he spoke calmly. TSK, TSK. Could this be a serpent person? How magical. This serpent person chick looks pretty good. Should I bring her home? Hee hee. What are serpent people doing in the humans' imperial city? Look at the injured appearance of those two serpent people. They must be serpent people with stories. On the long street of the imperial city, Yufu's face was filled with panic as she held on her father and I. The serpent person Yu Feng had released his spirit energy and recovered his Battle Saint cultivation level. After the battle with the Battle Saint Elder that imprisoned them, he was severely injured and had fallen into a coma once again. Yufu's heart was filled with fear as she was surrounded by a group of curious humans. She had arrived at the imperial city, but she did not know where Senior Bu's store was. She really wanted to open her mouth and ask, but she did not dare to do so. The surrounding people's gazes were filled with malicious intent. Suddenly, the crowd was separated, and an old man slowly walked over. He looked at her with a gentle gaze. Yufu's ears seemed to have become quiet. She only saw that person's mouth slightly open and close, but her mind involuntarily calmed down. Her entire body seemed to be out of her control as she followed that person's footsteps and left the crowd. Slowly, she disappeared into the crowd. Imperial City's luxurious inn, the seventh master, with blood dripping from the corner of his mouth, dashed through the door at lightning speed, causing the burly men who were sitting in the inn to be startled. Damn, wasn't that the one who ran past with his shining white, but the seventh master? Why is his taste so weird? Is he running around naked? A burly man with sideburns stared at the seventh master and shouted. The others also had strange expressions on their faces, but they all burst into laughter. The seventh master running around naked, this was a very interesting thing. When the seventh master changed into a set of clothes, he walked out of the room with a gloomy face. The laughter of the crowd immediately dissipated, and they looked at him with a serious expression. The seventh master gnashed his teeth and recounted what he had just experienced. The crowd immediately widened their eyes, and some of them could not help but slap the table and stand up on the spot. Damn it! How dare he mess with my brother? I will peel off his iron skin. The 13 bandits of Majo suddenly began to clamor, intending to flock to Fong Fong's little store to get back at them. All of you, stop right there. However, just as they reached the door, they were stunned by a stern and angry shout. Each of them suspiciously looked toward the scholarly man who slowly walked out of the room. This person was the boss of the 13 bandits, and the one with the highest cultivation level among them. He was already half a step into the realm of 7th grade battle saint. There are so many hidden experts in the Imperial City now, and the number of 7th grade battle saints is enough to make one's hair stand on end. However, no one has taken the initiative to attack that store. Why are you all rushing over with such great fanfare? To show off and become the target of public criticism? Aren't you all stupid? Chapter 195. Big Brother. Old 7th has suffered such a huge loss. Are we not going to get back at him? A burly man with a full beard said unwillingly. The beard on his face was trembling because of his anger. Get back at him? Do you know why no 7th grade battle saints have personally fought for the 5 stripes path understanding tree? Hu Yifeng glanced at his group of brothers and asked with a sneer. Confusion immediately appeared on their faces. This was also something they did not understand. It was just a small store, and the owner's cultivation level was only a 5th grade battle king. In their eyes, a mere battle king was no different from an ant. Could it be that a group of 7th grade battle saints were afraid of a 5th grade battle king? This was the biggest joke in the world. After arriving in the Imperial City, I personally sent people to gather information about this little store. This unremarkable little store that was opened in a small alleyway is far from being as simple as it seems on the surface. Hu Yifeng took in a deep breath and said, even though he wasn't sure how accurate the information was, it was better to believe it than to not believe it. According to the information, the store has a mechanical puppet that can fight against a 7th grade battle saint. Furthermore, there is a terrifying existence that is rumored to be a supreme beast lying in front of the door. However, the supreme beast part is probably just a rumor. Even if it is not a supreme beast, it is at least a 7th grade spirit beast. This is equivalent to having 2 7th grade battle saints guarding the store. Do you dare to trespass in such a small store? Hu Yifeng said solemnly. He tirelessly recounted the information about the store. Suddenly, everyone's eyes widened. The 7th master was even more shocked. Damn it. Indeed, that mechanical puppet was not an ordinary lump of metal. It could actually fight against a 7th grade battle saint. What a freaking dog. So, old 7th, you're already very lucky to be able to come back alive, Hu Yifeng said. Big brother, but old 7th, I am not willing to just let it go like this. The 7th master said with his teeth clenched. Recalling the scene of him being stripped naked and the pain in his balls, he felt fresh blood rushing to his head and about to burst out. Hu Yifeng paced back and forth with his hands behind his back. He narrowed his eyes and said calmly, of course we have to get back at him, but we cannot be hasty. Let's find a suitable time. Oh my God, so scary. What kind of monster is this? Mother, there's a lion, a man-eating lion. Is this a spiritual lion? So burly. The huge fire lion slowly walked on the main road of the imperial capital. With every step it took, the bricks on the ground seemed to be scorched. The fire lion's eyes were incomparably sharp as it arrogantly swept its gaze over the lowly humans around it. The lion's roar caused many people to shiver and wet their pants. On the back of the fire lion, a man in red smiled and patted the fire lion's head, calming it down. Don't mess around. Don't scare people. The man's voice was very gentle. His eyes were filled with curiosity as he sized up the bustling imperial capital. He was in a very good mood. Suddenly, a burly figure slowly walked over from afar and appeared in front of him. The eyes of the man in red slightly constricted. He solemnly looked at the burly figure and slightly nodded his head. The aura of this burly man was extremely terrifying. It was obvious that he was a powerful 7th grade battle saint. Your spirit beast is very handsome. However, in the imperial capital, spirit beasts are not allowed to travel on the main road. I hope that you can cooperate." Xiaoming solemnly looked at the man and beast before him, his heart trembling slightly. A 7th-grade fire lion and a 7th-grade battle saint. This combination was indeed frightening. "I am Mu Lingfeng from the Wildlands. I've long heard of the imperial capital's great general Xiaoming's strength and vigor. Now that I've seen you today, you truly live up to your reputation." The man in red, Mu Lingfeng, smiled and said. He leaped down from the back of the fire lion and gently patted the lion's head. In his hand, an array plate carved from a top-grade jade appeared. With a flash of light, the fire lion turned into a stream of light and entered the array plate. Xiaoming's eyes narrowed again as he sucked in a breath of cold air. Coming from the wildlands and knowing the way of taming beasts, could he be someone from that terrifying force? Even the people from that place had come out of the mountains. How terrifying! "Please, Your Excellency, I've already prepared a superior room for you," Xiaoming said. Mu Lingfeng gave Xiaoming a meaningful look. He did not refuse and slowly left with Xiaoming. "Miss, this jade hairpin is definitely good stuff. Just look at the quality of the material and its sparkling and translucent appearance. Selling it to you for 1 gold coin is definitely not expensive." On the side of the street, a peddler's eyes were rolling as he stared at the slightly dazed young girl in a warrior's robe. With his sharp eyes, he could immediately tell that this young girl was definitely a big fat sheep. That dazed look of hers made her very gullible. 1 gold coin. The young girl was dumbfounded. She sized up the jade hairpin suspiciously. The material of this jade hairpin was very ordinary. It was made of mixed jade. Could there be something special about it? "Miss, this is just a small business. Don't judge this jade hairpin by its ordinary appearance. Its effects are very special. If you wear it, you'll calm your chi and focus your mind, which will make it easier for you to cultivate. One look and I can tell that you're a martial artist, right? This jade hairpin suits you even better." The peddler's eyes kept rolling as he explained. The young girl was a little confused. Looking at the jade hairpin, she realized that it really did have the effect of calming one's chi and focusing one's mind, as the peddler said. Could this jade hairpin be some kind of spiritual weapon? Thinking that she had found a treasure, the young girl happily fished out her purse to pay for it. "Hey, little girl, it's been a few years and you're still as silly and adorable as ever." Just as the young lady took out a gold coin, a white and tender arm hooked around her neck. A breathtakingly beautiful face appeared beside her and said with a smile, "Come on, let's go." "Sister Anayen, what are you doing here?" the young girl exclaimed with joy when she saw the person next to her. Anayen rubbed the girl's head and grabbed the jade hairpin from her hand. She curled the corner of her mouth and said to the peddler, "Can you repeat what you just said?" The peddler did not expect such an outrageously beautiful woman to suddenly appear. His eyes rolled, and he was about to say something when he saw the woman's hand twist, and the jade hairpin was melting at a speed visible to the naked eye. Mamma mia! The peddler almost peed in his pants. This woman was a monster. "You dare to ask for a gold coin for this piece of trash that isn't even worth a copper coin? Aren't you afraid that I'll break all your teeth?" Anayan snorted coldly. The peddler felt bitter and did not even dare to breathe loudly. Anayan looked at the peddler's cowardly expression and immediately felt bored. She pulled the young girl and left. Ye Xiling, why did your master dare to let you out alone? You're practically being sold, and you're still counting money for him." Anayan glanced at the young girl beside her, who had already taken out a spiritual fruit and was munching on it. "I'm not afraid. He can't beat me." Ye Xiling blinked her eyes and said with her mouth full, "That's true. Even though you're silly, your cultivation isn't weak." Anayan muttered, "Let's go. I'll take you, little glutton, to eat something good." When Ye Xiling heard that there was something good to eat, her eyes immediately lit up and her face was filled with excitement. "Master told me to come to the Imperial City in search of destiny. Sister Anayan, do you know where it is?" Yi Xiling followed behind Anayan and asked in confusion. Who knows? Who cares? Since it's a destiny, we'll find it when the time is right. Anayan pursed her lips. The Supreme Elder also told her to come here to search for a destiny. Who the hell knew what that destiny was? 5 Stripes Path Understanding Tree? Maybe so. Outside the gates of the Imperial City, 3 figures arrived on horseback. Wu Yunbai looked at the majestic walls of the light-wind Imperial City, narrowed her eyes, and nodded. Then, she dismounted and led the spirit horse into the Imperial City. After a month's journey, they finally arrived at the Imperial City from the White Cloud Villa. Brat, I hope you still remember to save the Ice Soul Monarch Lotus Seed for me. Wu Yunbai murmured and smoothly entered the city. After sending off the beaming Wan Air and Ouyang Xiaoi, who had helped him for the whole day, the opening hours for the day were over. Bufang stretched his back and closed the door. The 5 Stripes Path Understanding Tree in the earthy yellow flower pot was already more than a meter tall. Bufang could constantly feel a strange fluctuation emanating from it. According to Ouyang Xiaoi's explanation, this fluctuation was the righteousness emitted by the Path Understanding Tree, which could increase one's cultivation speed and the probability of enlightenment. Ouyang Xiaoi would sit beside this small tree to cultivate during her breaks. Even though Bufang could feel this fluctuation, it did not help his cultivation in the slightest. This was because his cultivation did not rely on cultivation, but on business crystals. However, Bufang was still very clear about the value of the 5 Stripes Path Understanding Tree. He returned to the kitchen, scooped out a bowl of spirit energy spring water, and poured it into the flower pot. The store's greenery is not lush enough. Eat more and grow more green, Bufang softly said while looking at the Path Understanding Tree. Back in the kitchen, Bufang practiced his knife skills for a while, then leisurely walked to the cupboard. At this moment, he was a little excited, not because of anything else, but because today he would be able to taste the spirit wine brewed with 3 types of 7th-grade spirit herbs. Opening the cupboard, in an instant, a vigorous ocean scent wafted towards him. This was the environment adjusted by the cupboard, and Bufang could almost feel the salty sea breeze. Waving his hand, Bufang let the scent dissipate a little, and his gaze fell on the huge wine jar that was quietly placed in the cupboard. The wine jar did not change at all from a month ago, but Bufang knew that the interior had already undergone great changes. Holding the wine jar, Bufang suddenly exerted force, but found that the wine jar had become much heavier, and for a moment he actually could not move it. Raising his eyebrows, Bufang once again sank his energy into his dantian, and finally carried the wine jar out of the cupboard and placed it on the kitchen floor. The mouth of the wine jar was sealed tightly with clay, airtight, and not the slightest smell of the wine seeped out. However, in Bufang's heart, the curiosity in his heart increased. Filled with excitement, Bufang's hand covered the clay seal, and with a little force, the clay seal was opened with a bang. Chapter 196. The clay seal was slapped open by Bufang with a bang sound. In an instant, a rich and mellow wine aroma surged out from within the wine jar. The wine aroma seemed to have materialized and was concealed by a hazy mist. It instantly surged into Bufang's nostrils and stirred his taste buds. This was an extremely mellow fruit wine aroma with a hint of sweetness. However, this sweetness did not affect the aroma of the wine at all. Instead, it made the wine aroma even more alluring and intoxicating. Bufang's eyes widened, and he could not help but gulp down a mouthful of saliva. Then, he brought his nose closer and took a deep breath. The wine aroma was like a small snake scuttling into his nostrils. In an instant, it swam through his limbs and bones. It was as if his entire being was excited. How fragrant! Great wine! Bufang exclaimed in admiration. However, the expression on his face did not change much. This was because the method he used to brew this wine was wine within wine, jar within jar. Therefore, this was not the final product. Even though the wine aroma at this moment was not bad, it was only on par with the Ice Heart Jade Urn wine. There was still some distance to go before it could completely surpass the Ice Heart Jade Urn wine and become even more mellow and mellow than the dragon's breath described by an Yin. Bufang was not in a hurry. He took out 3 small wine jars and used a bamboo tube to scoop out the wine from the jars and pour them into the small wine jars. The bamboo tube was inserted into the wine jars. With a light scoop, the sound of the wine flowing could be heard. The wine aroma seemed to have settled for a long time and suddenly burst forth. An intoxicated look appeared on Bufang's face. The wine was not as clear as spring water. This time, the wine was a faint yellow. The yellow was pure and not artificial. It was not a turbid yellow caused by impurities, but a clear yellow. After dividing the wine from the wine jars into 3 small wine jars, the remaining wine jars were left in the large wine jars. Bufang took out a filter and once again filtered out half of the wine jars. After doing all this, Bufang's heart was once again on fire. He covered his palm with true qi and carefully reached into the wine jar. He grabbed one of the boiling hot wine jars, and his heart suddenly shivered. This should be the wine jar that was brewed using the phoenix bloodgrass. Bufang's heart was filled with excitement. Then, he suddenly exerted force in an attempt to remove the small wine jar. The surface of the small wine jar became very slippery. If not for the fact that his palm was covered with true qi, Bufang would not have been able to take the wine jar out so easily. When he took out the wine jar, Bufang was stunned. That was because the wine jar in his hand had completely changed. The surface of the wine jar had turned into a flame-like red. It was sparkling and translucent. Bufang turned his gaze toward the wine jar that seemed to be made of ice crystals. He removed the clay seal, and the wine fragrance that had been brewing for 3 years erupted. It gathered above the wine jar and transformed into an ice-blue lotus flower that was slowly moving. The wine fragrance from this wine jar was not hot, but cold. With a sniff, Bufang felt as if his nose was about to be frozen. This caused him to slightly furrow his brows. He lightly tapped on the wine jar with his index finger. The ice-blue wine suddenly trembled and rippled unceasingly, ringing out with a tinkling sound. Bufang licked his lips and set his sights on the wine jug containing the 3 stripes path understanding fruit. He removed the seal and found that it was plain, without any strange phenomenon occurring. Bufang was taken aback. He moved closer to take a look. Suddenly, the first cloud pattern on the wine jar dispersed. It was as if his heart had suddenly skipped a beat. A rich wine fragrance surged out and almost knocked Bufang over. The wine fragrance was incomparably rich. It rushed out of the store and even out of the alleyway, causing many people around the alleyway to be intoxicated. With a sniff, their faces were flushed and they could not stop trembling in drunkenness. Bufang felt dizzy and was slightly swaying from the impact of the wine. The second cloud pattern dispersed, and another wave of wine fragrance surged forth. The impact caused Bufang to take another step back. Like a soundless ripple, the wine fragrance once again spread out and almost enveloped the entire Immortal Phoenix restaurant. An Yin, who was tasting the delicacies with Yi Xiling in the Immortal Phoenix restaurant, was suddenly taken aback. Her exquisite nose suddenly twitched, and her eyes were as bright as the stars in the night sky. This wine fragrance, where's it coming from? Why is it so rich and fragrant? With a gulp, an Yin immediately brought Yi Xiling out of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. Her nose was constantly twitching as she traced the source of the wine fragrance. When the 3 wine fragrances of the 3 stripes path understanding fruit spread out, Bufang's store had already turned into a sea of wine fragrance. With just a whiff of the fragrance, Bufang's face would uncontrollably turn red, as if he had just drunk a cup of mellow wine. Bufang operated his true energy to suppress the drunkenness in his body. His eyes could not help but flash with astonishment. The wine made from these 3 ingredients using a special method actually had such an unusual effect. However, this was not the final product. Bufang picked up a jade jar with a solemn expression on his face. He first poured half of the yellow wine from the large jar into the jade jar. Then he picked up the fiery red wine jar and poured half of it. Next, he picked up the icy blue wine jar and poured half of it. Finally, he picked up the three stripes path understanding fruit wine jar and poured half of it. He used the jade jar to mix the three wine liquids together. The jade jar immediately overflowed with brilliance and slightly trembled. Bufang's eyes lit up. He closed the jar's lid and filled his hands with true energy. With a pat of his hands, the wine jar immediately soared into the air. It spun and emitted a continuous buzzing sound. Donk! The jade jar was suddenly placed on the table with a dull thud. Fine beads of sweat overflowed from Bufang's forehead. His eyes were filled with a fiery passion. This wine had finally taken shape. Carefully opening the lid of the jade jar, no unusual phenomenon occurred. However, an incomparably mellow wine fragrance, which was much richer than the previous 4 wine fragrances, wafted out. This wine fragrance was vast and mighty, rolling and surging like a vast ocean. In an instant, Bufang's entire being was immersed in it. The wine fragrance swept out like the waves of the sea, surging and surging. With the store as the center, it spread out. And Ai Yin, who was holding Yi Ziling's hand, suddenly changed her expression. Then, her face flushed red and her whole body trembled uncontrollably. This wine fragrance changed again. It became even more unbelievable. The wine fragrance was like waves, sweeping out in all directions. With the store as the center, half of the imperial city was enveloped in it. Chapter 197. Half of the imperial city was enveloped by the fragrance of the wine. This was an extremely rich fragrance that caused people to be intoxicated. Like a wave, it surged out and silently spread out. Not far from the alleyway, Ai Yin and Yi Ziling both took a deep breath. Their faces were flushed red. They looked at each other and saw the incredulity in each other's eyes. How can this wine be so fragrant? Ai Yin murmured. Then, she sped up and sped toward the source of the wine aroma. In a luxurious inn in the imperial city, the 13 bandits of Majo were toasting each other in the inn. They exchanged toasts with one another, and the sound of laughter resounded endlessly as they drank the wine. The inn was bustling with activity. The aroma of food and wine permeated the air. Suddenly, an invisible wave surged forward. What followed was an indescribable aroma. Clang! A crisp sound rang out. The 13 bandits were stunned. They lost their grip on the wine jugs in their hands and fell to the ground. The wine spilled all over the floor. However, they acted as if they did not notice. They squinted their eyes and unconsciously twitched their noses. Saliva dripped from the corners of their mouths. Their faces were filled with intoxication. So fragrant. Is this the aroma of wine? It's so hard to control. Brothers, let's go drink. When the 13 great bandits regained their senses, they immediately burst into an uproar. The fragrance of the wine made them feel as though their souls were about to leave their bodies. As martial artists, they were naturally fond of wine. When the wine worm in their stomachs was lured out, they felt extremely uncomfortable. The 13 bandits loudly shouted and rushed out of the inn. They followed the direction of the wine aroma and marched in a grandiose manner. Shao Mansion. Shao Meng sat in his study. The light flickered and the cold wind blew outside the window. He put down the pen in his hand, frowned, and rubbed his eyes. An intoxicating aroma of wine drifted over. It was like the caress of a lover. Shao Meng's body trembled and his eyes opened involuntarily. He was addicted to wine. Good wine. Such an aroma doesn't seem to exist in this world. Shao Meng took a deep breath, wanting to capture all the wine fragrance in the air. He stood up, took the thick crane cloak hanging on the chair, put it on, and followed the direction of the wine fragrance. Xiao Yu was sitting cross-legged in his room. His entire body was surrounded by a white sword aura. The fierce sword aura surged and continuously gathered above his head. Sometimes it transformed into a small sword, and sometimes it transformed into a myriad of sword auras. Suddenly, the sword light dissipated with a PU sound. Xiao Yu opened his eyes and couldn't help but lick his dry lips. Wine. A wine more fragrant than the ice heart jade urn wine. My God. Xiao Yu's hoarse voice contained an indescribable shock. Smelling the fragrance of the wine, Xiao Yu did not even have the mood to train anymore. He directly leapt up, and with a pinch of his sword fingers, the door instantly opened wide. His entire body stepped on the sword light as he swiftly flew out. How could I, Xiao Yu, miss out on such fine wine? Ha ha ha. Ouyang Manor. A thunderous, snoring sound reverberated in the room of the three barbarians of Ouyang. The three brothers slept in the same room. Every night, it was like thunder. There was no longer a need for the servants to guard the room, because the sound of snoring was enough to automatically guard against thieves. Suddenly, the snoring that was supposed to resound throughout the night came to an abrupt stop. Then, a series of smacking sounds could be heard. The eyes of the three barbarians of Ouyang were wide open, and their nostrils were wide open as they fiercely sniffed the wine fragrance in the air. They looked like dogs that had smelled meat. Bang, bang, bang. The three brothers got out of bed in unison, put on their clothes, sniffed their noses, and with saliva dripping from the corners of their mouths, they majestically ran out of the room and headed straight for the source of the wine fragrance. This was a sleepless night. Half of the imperial city was enveloped in the rich aroma of the wine. It was so tempting that all the wine lovers unconsciously followed the aroma. Bufang wiped away the beads of sweat on his forehead as the corners of his mouth twitched. As he looked at the wine in the jade jar, he immediately heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. The four types of wine were all filled with spiritual energy. It was not something that could be done simply by pouring them together and shaking them. Bufang needed to use his true energy to neutralize them so that each type of wine would be perfectly blended together. This was not a qualitative change caused by a quantitative change. Instead, it was a qualitative improvement. The fragrance emitted from the jade jar was extremely enchanting. Just by smelling the wine fragrance, Bufang felt a wave of intoxication. One could imagine how strong the wine was. Compared to the fragrance of the ice-hard jade urn wine, there was no comparison at all. It was like the difference between the light of a firefly and the light of the moon. Of course, this was only the difference in the wine fragrance. The actual difference in the taste might not be that great. However, the spirit energy contained in the ice-hard jade urn wine was much weaker than this newly brewed spirit wine. Bufang took out a green jade porcelain cup and poured himself a cup of wine. After mixing, the color of the wine had fused into a light green color. A faint mist lingered above the wine, which was incomparably faintly discernible. It was like the immortal wine of the heavenly palace. Lifting up the cup, Bufang looked at the small cup of wine and could not help but lick his lips, forcefully suppressing the impatience in his heart. Good wine needed to be savored slowly. An impatient person would not be able to eat hot tofu. This was a principle that Bufang understood. He gently took a small sip of the wine. The moment the wine entered his mouth, it was cool and refreshing. In an instant, it rushed into his mouth. After entering his throat, the wine suddenly exploded like a volcano eruption. A burning sensation engulfed his entire body. Bufang felt as if all the pores on his body had opened up and his eyes were wide open. When the wine entered his stomach, Bufang felt as if a vast ocean was surging toward him and drowning his entire body. The rich spirit energy in his stomach was like an explosion. After 3 consecutive explosions, Bufang could not help but let out a drunken burp. The refreshing feeling that engulfed his entire body caused Bufang to squint his eyes and slightly bare his teeth. So refreshing. Good wine. It went without saying that this was definitely a good wine. The ice-hard jade urn wine could not compare to it. Whether it was the taste or the fragrance, it completely suppressed the ice-hard jade urn wine. After taking another sip, the refreshing feeling of burning flames within the coldness made Bufang's nostrils feel as if they were about to blow out waves of air. The combination of ice and fire is so refreshing that it can fly. Bufang praised and took another sip. After 3 sips, He had just finished the wine in the green jade porcelain cup. Slightly shaking his head, Bufang felt a little tipsy. He had only drunk 1 cup of wine, but he was already on the verge of passing out. The strength of this new wine was simply terrifying. Forcefully channeling his true energy to clear his head, Bufang smacked his lips as he looked at the wine in the jade wine jar. His eyes were burning with passion. Bufang estimated that he could only brew 3 jars of this wine. If this wine was to be sold, it would definitely not be sold 1 jar at a time. After all, the strength of this wine was too strong. Bufang almost passed out after a single cup. He mixed the remaining wine and channeled his true energy to create 2 more jars of wine. Bufang poured the remaining wine into Xiaobai's mouth. The metal lump Xiaobai only rubbed its bald head. Its mechanical eyes flickered, but it did not have the slightest reaction. This is indeed Owner Bu's place. I was wondering who in the Imperial City could brew such a rich wine aroma. Who else could it be other than Owner Bu? Yin followed the fragrance of the wine and arrived at the entrance of the alleyway. When she saw the familiar alleyway, she suddenly had a look of realization. Then, a sweet smile appeared on her beautiful face. However, her smile quickly disappeared and was replaced by a frown. Owner Bu definitely wouldn't open his store at night. Doesn't that mean I won't be able to drink this wine? Just as Yin was hesitating, a series of footsteps could be heard coming from the empty street. Yin turned her head in astonishment and saw a group of people rushing toward the alleyway. Seeing that group of people, the corners of Yin's mouth twitched. This lineup was a little scary. The 13 bandits were at the front. As they ran, they fiercely sniffed the wine aroma in the air. Behind the 13 bandits were several elders. The aura of these elders was also surging. Among them, there were even 7th-grade battle saints. A man in red was sniffing as he stood with his hands behind his back. An elder with white hair and a white beard was also striding toward the store with a long sword on his back. The 3 barbarians of Ouyang and the 3 drunkards of Ouyang were taking heavy steps with drool dripping from the corners of their mouths. Behind them were General Ouyang Zongheng and the old man Ouyang Qi. Almost all of the Ouyang family's drunkards were present. A sword light flashed by, and Xiaoyu arrived on his sword. Xiaoming also arrived following the wine aroma. This was a terrifying group. When the group of people met on the street, they immediately stared at each other with strange expressions on their faces. Xiaoming did not know whether to laugh or cry. As expected, it was Owner Bu's doing again. Aside from Fong Fong's little store, where else could this wine aroma appear? The expression of the 7th master fluctuated between green and red. Damn, why is he here again? This was the place that left him with an unforgettable memory. Everyone looked at each other and nodded their heads to express their greetings. None of them said anything. They were actually a little embarrassed. After all, they were all people of status. It would be a lie to say that they were not embarrassed to come out in the middle of the night following the wine aroma and even run into each other. They continued forward and stepped into the alleyway. They saw the store with its tightly shut doors, and a rich wine aroma was continuously wafting from within. Everyone was astonished. It was said that a good wine's aroma could spread for 10 miles. However, the wine aroma of this store was simply enveloping a radius of several hundred miles. Such a wine aroma is really making this old man's heart itch. I will go ahead and have a taste. Everyone, please feel free. The white-haired and white-browed elder with a long sword on his back was the first to lose control. He smiled at the crowd and walked toward the store. The ancestor of the Void Sword Pavilion, Tian Shuzi. Xiaoyu's pupils constricted. This was a sword expert, a 7th-grade battle saint. However, his expression quickly became odd. Looking at Tian Shuzi's back, the corners of his mouth curled up. Chapter 198. Everyone in the Void Sword Pavilion knew that Tian Shuzi loved wine. Sword cultivators loved to walk with their swords, drink wine, and make merry. Their swords and wine seemed to be intertwined and became an inseparable thing. It seemed to be an unspoken rule that sword cultivators loved wine. Xiao Yu loved wine, so he was attracted by the aroma. Tian Shuzi loved wine even more, so he impatiently stepped forward. Xiao Yu playfully looked at Tian Shuzi. The aroma came from Owner Bu's store, yet Tian Shuzi actually dared to step forward. Did he really think that Owner Bu's reputation as the #1 and scrupulous store in the Imperial City was undeserved? No one dared to act rashly. They all stared strangely at Tian Shuzi's back as he gradually walked into the alleyway. Tian Shuzi stood with his hands behind his back and a long sword on his back. He was wearing a long robe that fluttered in the wind. Tian Shuzi unhurriedly arrived at the entrance of the store. What entered his eyes was the big black dog that was snoring loudly at the entrance. After pondering for a while, Tian Shuzi turned his gaze toward the tightly shut door. The store's entrance was tightly shut. It seemed like it was not open for business. Tian Shuzi raised his hand and knocked on the door. The sound of knocking echoed in the alleyway, causing everyone's hearts to tighten and their gazes to become even more serious. After knocking for a while, Tian Shuzi's expression became gloomy. He realized that there was not the slightest sound coming from within the store. This meant that the owner of the store could not be bothered with him and did not even want to open the door. How preposterous. However, the other party might not know my name. Tian Shuzi's expression was gloomy as he thought to himself. He lightly coughed and spoke in an elderly voice. Store owner, I am Tian Shuzi from the Void Sword Pavilion. I suddenly smelled the rich aroma of wine within the store and came here today to ask for wine. Owner, please open the door for a chat. Tian Shuzi's voice was filled with vigor as it continuously echoed in the quiet alleyway. However, even after a long time, there was still no response. The store's door was still tightly shut, and there was no sign of it opening. Tian Shuzi's patience finally ran out. His face was as dark as still water as he coldly said, Are you not going to respond to my request for wine? Don't tell me that I, Tian Shuzi, am worth it for you to open your shop? Tian Shuzi, the ancestor of the Void Sword Pavilion, was a powerhouse of his generation that swept through the Light Wind Empire when he was young. Even though he was old now, his might was still the same. Many legends about him were still circulating in the empire. Xiao Yu curled his lips. He felt that Tian Shuzi's words were quite funny. To be honest, your face really wasn't worth Owner Bu opening the door. How dare you? I've never received such treatment, and I've witnessed your arrogance today. Since it's like this, then don't blame me for trespassing. Tian Shuzi was enraged. The true energy in his dantian began to circulate on its own, causing his white hair and beard to flutter. Surging true chi circled around his body like small dragons, wrapping around his body. Bang! Tian Shuzi's eyes narrowed. His palm that was filled with true energy fiercely slammed into the store's door. A wave of energy rolled out, and the surging true energy caused the expressions of many people present to slightly change. Tian Shuzi's cultivation level was indeed worthy of his reputation. However, after the crowd exclaimed in surprise, their expressions became even weirder. The straightforward and adorable Yi Xiling could not help but let out a chuckle. The atmosphere instantly became a little awkward. The surging waves of air that Tian Shuzi emitted slammed onto the door, but the door did not budge in the slightest. The door of the store was still tightly shut. Tian Shuzi's hair and beard were all fluttering. He widened his eyes and pressed his palm against the door. He did not know if he should put it down or not. What happened to trespassing? In the end, he could not even open the door. This was a blatant slap in the face. Furthermore, this slap in the face was caused by him. It was simply too embarrassing. Tian Shuzi retracted his palm and lightly coughed. He tapped the ground with the tip of his feet, and his entire body floated up. He took a few steps back and put some distance between himself and the store. Forming a sword finger with one hand, the sword energy on Tian Shuzi's body spiraled in the air, ripping and rotating. This old man has already given you a chance. Since you did not cherish it, then this old man will really trespass, Tian Shuzi calmly said. The store's door was still tightly shut, and not even a fart was let out. Tian Shuzi flew into a rage out of humiliation. He lightly snorted and slid his sword finger. The thousands of sword energy floating around his body swirled and rapidly charged toward the store's door. Blackie, who was lying on the ground, opened its mouth and yawned. It lazily looked at the dazzling sword energy charging toward the door before rolling its eyes and continuing to sleep. Smoke and dust rose into the air. A gust of wind blew past, and the smoke and dust that filled the store's entrance gradually dissipated. Tian Shuzi's pupils trembled, and his eyeballs nearly popped out of their sockets. The heck? Is this shabby store made out of a tortoise shell? You can't even break it like that? Even if you can't, you should at least leave a mark, right? Do you have to be so disrespectful? Tian Shuzi felt as if he had just been beaten by a dog. The power of his sword finger was already extraordinary. Even the gates of the imperial city would have been blasted open by it. However, the store's entrance was actually unable to shatter a few broken wooden planks. Huh, old man Tian Shuzi, are you really that weak? You can't even shatter a door. The Tian Shuzi finger truly lives up to its name. It can't even budge a door after smashing it. It is indeed powerful. Elder sister and Ayin, is this old man an idiot? Pucci. As Tian Shuzi listened to the discussions around him and the unbridled mockery of the crowd, he suddenly felt as if his heart was being pierced by an invisible arrow. Why, just as the crowd was mocking Tian Shuzi, the enraged Tian Shuzi was about to pull out the longsword on his back. However, just as he was preparing to unleash an attack with all his might, the store's door suddenly opened. Once the door was opened, an even more intense wine fragrance wafted out. This wine fragrance was like poison, causing the crowd to involuntarily become intoxicated. A figure, an unrestrained figure, was holding a blue and white porcelain cup and lightly leaning against the door as he stared at them with an intoxicated expression. Burp. Who exactly is knocking on my store's door in the middle of the night? Bufong's face was flushed red, but his expression was extremely solemn. This kind of incongruity caused the crowd to feel extremely strange. He was wearing a long robe, and the front of his chest was open, seemingly due to the heat. The wine fragrance wafted out from within the store. Tian Shuzi's eyes were fixated on the blue and white porcelain cup in Bufong's hand. Good wine. This is definitely good wine. This is the best wine I've ever seen in my life, Tian Shuzi exclaimed. The blue and white porcelain cup in Bufong's hand was enshrouded in dense spirit energy. 3 cloud patterns floated above it, as if it was a brewing spirit wine bomb. This is naturally good wine, but you still haven't answered my question? Were you the one who knocked on my store's door in the middle of the night? Bufong leaned against the door and indifferently glanced at Tian Shuzi. That's me. This old man is here to request for wine. I hope that you can fulfill my wish, Tian Shuzi passionately said. Bufong raised his eyebrows. He raised the blue and white porcelain cup in his hand and gently swayed it in front of the crowd. Are you talking about this? Wine in this cup? Bufong lightly said. As Bufong swung the cup, the fragrance from the wine cup assailed their nostrils, causing their eyes to light up. And Ai Yin, Xiao Yu, and the rest had extremely strange expressions as they looked at Bufong, whose face was flushed red and whose clothes were wide open. The corners of their mouths twitched. Was this still the owner who they knew? Even though his face was still expressionless, his actions were simply too dazzling. Was Owner Bu drunk? That's right. Tian Shuzi swallowed a mouthful of saliva. The liquor bug in his stomach had long been seduced. Bufong looked at him and slightly curled the corners of his mouth. Then, under Tian Shuzi's dumbfounded gaze, he downed a cup of wine in one gulp. TSK. Good wine. Bufong slightly bared his teeth as he praised. Tian Shuzi felt as if his heart was being pierced by a knife. This guy was definitely doing this on purpose. Today's opening hours have ended. We will not be selling any dishes including good wine, Bufong said as he lightly exhaled. Tian Shuzi's expression darkened and became extremely cold. I told you to sell wine, so you sold it. Cut the crap. In the Void Sword Pavilion, or even in the entire Light Wind Empire, no one dared to speak to him in such a manner. Even if he were to snatch a cup of wine, no one would dare to say anything. The owner of the store before him was actually so arrogant. Taking a step forward, Tian Shuzi's body was surrounded by sword light. In an instant, he appeared in front of Bu Fong, bringing with him a fierce gust of wind. Those who dare to fool me have already turned into a pile of bones. Brat, are you courting death? Tian Shuzi's tone was incomparably domineering. At this moment, the might of the Void Sword Pavilion's old ancestor was completely displayed. Bu Fong calmly leaned against the door. With 2 fingers holding the blue and white porcelain cup, he let out another burp. The rich aroma of wine pervaded the air. Behind him, 2 red rays of light flickered, and Xiao Bai's chubby figure appeared. Bu Fong looked at Tian Shuzi, who was right in front of him. Looking at the other party's dazzling white beard and long white hair, he wrinkled his nose. I already said that today's opening hours have ended and I won't be selling wine. Are you trying to cause trouble? Then you'll have to bear the consequences. Chapter 199. If you want to cause trouble, you'll have to bear the consequences. Bu Fong's voice was very calm. He leaned against the door frame, holding the blue and white porcelain cup between his fingers, and let out a light belch. His expressionless face was flushed with alcohol, and his eyes were slightly tipsy, which made him look very attractive. Tian Shuzi's face scrunched up into a frown as he inhaled the almost tangible burp. He took a few steps back and coldly stared at Bu Fong. With a sneer on his face, his white beard and white hair were slightly fluttering as a sharp sword energy floated behind him. So what if I want to cause trouble? If I don't get to drink this wine today, I'll tear down your store. Tian Shuzi pinched his fingers together, and the long sword on his back emitted a crisp cry. It actually directly soared into the sky, spun a few times, and floated above his head. The sword was incomparably resplendent. In the dark night, it was as dazzling as starlight. The secret technique of the Void Sword Pavilion, the sword manipulation technique. In the distance, the corner of Xiao Yu's mouth twitched as he watched Tian Shuzi display the sword manipulation technique. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. Judging from Tian Shuzi's appearance, it was obvious that he did not do any homework before coming to the Imperial City. It was obvious that he did not understand the trump card of Fong Fong's little store. Even Xiao Meng had suffered a great loss at this store before. Owner Bu was completely unafraid of a 7th grade battle saint. And Ai Yin, on the other hand, was rather interested. Her beautiful eyes slightly widened and her long eyelashes blinked as she expectantly looked at the chubby Xiao Bai who was already walking out from behind Bu Fong. This puppet was very interesting, and Ai Yin had never seen a puppet that could resist a 7th grade battle saint. She was going to feast her eyes on it today. Elder sister and Ai Yin, aren't we going to help? Tian Shuzi is a 7th grade battle saint, and the owner is only a 5th grade battle king. Won't he be crushed to death? Yi Xiling asked with her eyes wide open. She puzzledly looked toward an Ai Yin, who was watching a good show. Don't worry, that old man won't die, an Ai Yin said as she patted Yi Xiling's head. Yi Xiling, sister and Ai Yin, you're talking to the wrong person. I'm saying that the boss might be in danger. A 7th grade battle saint is still very powerful, Yi Xiling said seriously. And Ai Yin looked at the girl, who was serious and cute, and could not help but laugh. It's okay. That old man really won't die. Yi Xiling, Xiao Meng did not look worried either. He stood with his hands behind his back. He wanted to see how strong the patriarch of the Void Sword Pavilion was. He had been able to fight against Xiao Bai back then. If Tian Shuzi could do the same, then he would have to take him seriously. The 13 bandits of Majo smiled excitedly as they stared at Tian Shuzi and Bu Fong with meaningful smiles. The man in red, Mu Lingfeng, leaned against the wall of the alleyway. He stroked his slender fingers as he calmly watched the battle that was about to break out. Bu Fong smacked his lips and savored the intoxicating aroma of the wine. He straightened his body, adjusted the lapel in front of his chest, turned around, and lightly patted Xiao Bai's stomach. He calmly said, "Troublemakers, just strip them and throw them out. Everyone, the store's opening hours for today have ended. If you'd like to taste the wine, please come earlier tomorrow and line up. After opening hours, the store will not provide service." Bu Fang's figure gradually disappeared into the shadows of the store. However, his calm voice drifted out and lingered in the ears of the crowd. Everyone's faces were slightly startled. Tomorrow, earlier? Someone curled the corner of his mouth, seemingly unconcerned and disdainful of Bu Fang's words. Who did he think he was? Making us, a group of 7th-grade battle saints, line up and wait for your opening? Even the Emperor might not have the right to do so. Line up tomorrow? If your store gets smashed tonight, then there's no need to line up tomorrow. The 7th Master, who was mixed in with the 13 bandits, looked at the imposing Tian Shuzi with a sneer on his face. When Tian Shuzi saw that Bu Fang had actually ignored him and directly entered the store, he instantly flew into a rage out of humiliation. Tian Shuzi, was renowned throughout the world. When had he ever been looked down upon like this? This young man was simply too arrogant. Arrogant brat, do you think you can stop me with a mere puppet? You must be dreaming. Tian Shuzi angrily roared. With a flick of his fingers, the flying sword transformed into a stream of light. Tian Shuzi took a step forward and instantly transformed into a sky full of afterimages. Wrapped in sword light, he charged into the store and headed straight for Bu Fang. Xiao Bai had a chubby mechanical belly, and his mechanical red eyes were faintly flickering. As the red light swept across, the 7th Master, who was hiding in the crowd, trembled all over. Damn it, he was even traumatized. The sky full of sword light and the illusionary afterimages. Tian Shuzi's speed was extremely fast, and he wanted to bypass Xiao Bai in an instant. Tian Shuzi's cultivation level was very high. This move caused everyone present to suck in a breath of cold air. Their expressions became grave. An expert who entered the Battle Saint realm with a sword was definitely terrifying in terms of killing power. Even Xiao Meng felt some pressure when facing this move. And Ai Yin, on the other hand, curled her lips. This coquettish sword move was so coquettish that it gave people goosebumps. However, she had to admit, it was indeed powerful. Sister and Ai Yin, seeing Tian Shuzi's move, Yi Xiling once again turned her head toward Ai Yin to ask if she should make a move. However, Ai Yin still shook her head. However, the grave expression on her face showed that she was also a little hesitant at this moment. Tian Shuzi was incomparably ethereal. Wrapped in sword light, he wanted to scuttle into the store. He was very confident that this move was the Imperial sword technique. Regardless of whether it was for killing or escaping, it would be so fast that it would dazzle the eyes of others. How could a mere puppet block it? This arrogant brat. I must teach him a good lesson and let him know what it means to respect the strong. Tian Shuzi sneered in his heart. Bang! Suddenly, with a soft sound, the sky full of sword light disappeared completely in an instant. A long sword fell onto the ground with a jingle, emitting a crisp sound. Tian Shuzi's expression stiffened, and he found it hard to believe. His illusionary afterimage rapidly dashed forward in an attempt to overtake Xiao Bai. However, his entire body suddenly began to tremble. In his eyes, a huge mechanical palm was continuously enlarging. Bang! Tian Shuzi's head collided with Xiao Bai's raised palm. In that instant of collision, it was as if a bottle of 5 flavors had been knocked over. Sour, sweet, bitter, and spicy feelings instantly surged into his heart. What the F***CK? Tian Shuzi's swiftly moving figure came to a screeching halt as he cursed in his heart. He was directly sent flying by a tremendous force. His body directly spun in the air before he violently crashed onto the ground. The remaining force even pushed him a great distance. Awkward, silence, the scene instantly became a little strange. The crowd stared at each other in disbelief. They looked at Tian Shuzi, who was lying on the ground in a sorry state, clutching his nose and groaning in disbelief. Then they looked at Xiao Bai, who had an iron-skinned belly. That expression was as if a dog had bitten a lion to death. Yi Xilin's eyes were wide open in an adorable manner. Her rosy and glossy red lips were slightly opened, so wide that an egg could almost be stuffed inside. The corners of Enai Yan's mouth curled up as she let out a long sigh of relief in her heart. As expected, Honorbu was not out of his mind. Instead, he had the ability to do so, even though she did not know how much of a coincidence the previous scene was, but to be able to send an attacking 7th-grade battle saint flying with a single slap. Xiaobai, you are awesome. Enai Yin was overjoyed. Tian Shuzi covered his nose as he stood up from the ground. In that instant, his nose had come into contact with White Yi's mechanical palm. The pain he felt when his nose collided with White Yi's mechanical palm made him want to cry. He was enraged, thoroughly enraged. Previously, he only wanted to teach this arrogant brat a lesson. Now, he wanted to dismantle this mechanical puppet that had humiliated him. He almost failed miserably due to his carelessness. This was simply humiliating. Buzz. With a sword hum, the long sword on the ground whizzed up and floated in front of Tian Shuzi. His expression turned solemn, and there seemed to be tiny swords swirling in his eyes. Then, with a light flick of his fingers, the long sword split into two into four into a huge pile. The densely packed long sword floated in front of him. Attack my sword! Chapter 200. Bu Fong staggered back to the kitchen and let out a light breath. The rich smell of alcohol emanated from his mouth. After drinking 2 cups of this wine, Bu Fong felt dizzy. He had to admit that the strength of this new wine was much stronger than that of the Ice Heart Jade Urn wine. After cleaning up all the wine jars in the kitchen, there were only 3 white jade wine jars left. They contained the freshly brewed spirit wine with a fragrance that could cover half of the imperial city. The 3 white jade wine jars were sealed with clay. The rich fragrance of the wine was also sealed within the wine jars, no longer emitting. Bu Fong patted the white jade wine jar and licked his lips. The smell of alcohol emanated from his mouth. Looking at the white jade wine jar, Bu Fong muttered to himself for a while. It was time to give this wine a name. A spirit wine brewed with 3 types of 7th-grade spirit herbs. Should he call it the 3 Treasures wine? Bu Fong hurriedly shook his head. This name was too awkward. It would lower the wine's value. It feels like a burning flame in a sip, but it feels like ice when it enters the throat. How about ice fire wine? No, it's still too old-fashioned. Frost Blaze Path Understanding wine? Let's call it Frost Blaze Path Understanding brew. Bu Fong rubbed his chin and muttered to himself for a while. His heart was burning. Frost Blaze Path Understanding brew was much stronger than the Ice Heart Jade Urn wine. He wondered how it would compare to the Dragon's Breath. Bu Fong knew that the Dragon's Breath came from Enai Yan's description. Since he had never tasted the Dragon's Breath, he was unable to make a judgment. System, can you compare the Frost Blaze Path Understanding brew and the Dragon's Breath? Bu Fong asked the system expectantly. However, the system was silent for a while before replying seriously and solemnly. The evaluation must be made by someone who has tasted the Dragon's Breath. Therefore, the host has not completed the abrupt task. Please continue to work hard. However, the Frost Blaze Path Understanding brew has been recorded. The selling price will now be evaluated. The system's answer was beyond Bu Fong's expectations. He was slightly stunned on the spot. Must the person who had tasted the Dragon's Breath be able to judge? Bu Fong couldn't help but furrow his brows. But very quickly, his brows relaxed and the corners of his mouth twitched. There was only one person in the imperial capital who had tasted the Dragon's Breath, and that was Enai Yin. Therefore, as long as Enai Yin tasted the Frost Blaze Path Understanding brew tomorrow, he would naturally be able to make a judgment. The system was evaluating the selling price. Bu Fong didn't know what the selling price would be, but there was one thing that Bu Fong was sure of. It definitely wouldn't be cheap. For a while, there was still no result. Bu Fong was already sleepy from the alcohol. He yawned and walked out of the kitchen, preparing to close the door and go back upstairs to sleep. Xiao Bai stood at the entrance of the store like an unshakable mountain. The red glow in its mechanical eyes flickered continuously. The area in front of Tian Shuzi was filled with countless swords. These swords were formed by the sword in his hand. Tian Shuzi had a solemn expression on his face. Blood flowed down from his nose and stained his white beard. "Slay this metal puppet for me." With a light shout, Tian Shuzi moved his mind, and the true energy in his body surged out. With a tinkling sound, the densely packed sword shadows whizzed toward Xiao Bai. The sword shadows that blotted out the sky seemed to have transformed into a rain of swords. It was so dense that it sent chills down one's spine and made one's heart tremble. This rain of swords contained Tian Shuzi's sword energy. This was the sword energy of a 7th grade battle saint. Its power was extremely powerful and extraordinary. As it poured down, even a city gate would collapse. An ordinary 7th grade battle saint would not even have the courage to resist this move. This move was extremely terrifying. The surrounding people were in awe. They all had a considerable understanding of Tian Shuzi's terrifying strength. Xiao Bai's plump figure seemed so tiny in the midst of the rain of swords. He was like a small boat in the middle of a vast ocean that could be capsized at any moment. A mechanical voice rang out. Xiao Bai raised his mechanical eyes, and a red glow swept across the rain of swords. In the next instant, the rain of swords suddenly engulfed him. "Ha ha! Shatter for me!" Tian Shuzi laughed heartily. He wiped away the blood flowing down from his nose with an incomparably joyful expression. Suddenly, his laughter came to a screeching halt, because in front of him, the rain of swords seemed to have been swallowed by a bottomless pit, and the number of swords was constantly decreasing. In just a short while, only a few sword shadows were left. The mighty aura instantly became incomparably small. Tian Shuzi's eyes widened as he stared at Xiao Bai. He stretched out a finger and could not help but tremble. Damn it! How could there be such a terrifying puppet in this world? A red glow flashed across Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes. The fine iron longsword in his hand was immediately bent by his grip. With a snap, it was forcefully snapped into two. A crisp sound echoed in the alleyway that was so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air in that instant. Tian Shuzi even spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was filled with disappointment as he retreated several steps, and his entire body trembled. That was a spirit sword that he had refined using his blood essence. To think that it was actually snapped into pieces by the puppet in front of him. Tian Shuzi felt his kidneys twitch, and he felt extremely weak. Troublemakers will be stripped as an example to others. Xiao Bai's mechanical voice rang out. Everyone was taken aback and did not understand what was going on. When the 7th master, who was hiding in the crowd, heard this familiar nightmarish voice, he was so frightened that his entire body began to tremble like a sieve. It's here again. Crazy clothes, stripping demon. Xiao Bai threw the broken longsword in his hand onto the ground and raised his palm. With a snapping sound, his palm actually extended and appeared above Tian Shuzi's head. He grabbed Tian Shuzi's head and lifted him up. That was a palm that was capable of crushing a spirit sword. Everyone felt a chill run down their spines. If this palm exerted force, Tian Shuzi's head would definitely not be as hard as a spirit sword. The consequences would naturally be unimaginable. However, the reality was not as the crowd imagined. Even though the scene was still so beautiful that it was hard to look straight at it. Rip. Tian Shuzi felt a chill run through his entire body. The robe on his body was actually torn apart by this iron lump. Oh my God! What was this iron lump trying to do? Was it so deranged that it wouldn't even let an old man off? The 7th master's teeth were chattering. This familiar scene, this blinding scene, all of this caused his heart to ache. The red glow in Xiao Bai's eyes swept across Tian Shuzi's naked body. Then, with a flick of its arm, it threw the lifeless Tian Shuzi away. Like a sandbag, he was thrown into the distance, causing a cloud of dust to rise. Yin blinked her eyes, and hurriedly covered Yi Ziling's eyes with her hands. "Little girl, don't look." The 13 bandits suddenly felt their teeth aching. The sound of inhaling breaths rose and fell. Damn it, it was just as the seventh master had said. This iron lump was a clothes-stripping maniac. It didn't kill you, but it still wanted to strip you. It was simply deranged. Tian Shuzi crawled up from the ground. As the wind blew past, his balls were slightly cold. His old face was deathly pale. He had already sobered up from the temptation of the fine wine. How could he still drink wine when his clothes were gone? The iron lump puppet in front of him had an extremely valiant battle prowess. This was the store's trump card. No wonder it dared to sit on a 5 stripes path understanding tree. It turned out that it had a puppet that could casually strip off the clothes of a 7th grade battle saint. How terrifying. Tian Shuzi no longer had the face to stay here and watch. With a casual wave of his hand, several long swords appeared in his hand. With a pinch of his fingers, these long swords began to revolve around his lower body, as if they had transformed into an apron. At least, they were able to block off that blinding scene. Xiaoyu was dumbfounded. As expected of the ancestor of the Void Sword Pavilion, he knew how to have fun. Tap tap. The faint sound of footsteps rang out. The drunkenness on Bufang's face had yet to recede. He walked to the entrance and shot a glance at the naked Tian Shuzi, who was using the revolving sword to cover his lower body. The corners of his mouth twitched. Patting Xiao Bai's plump belly, Bufang simply said, "We're closed. If you want wine, come earlier tomorrow and line up. Oh, there's a limited amount of wine. First come, first served." Bufang simply said. Xiao Bai turned around and returned to the store. He went straight into the kitchen. Bufang, on the other hand, closed the door under the dumbfounded gazes of the crowd. After closing the door, Bufang felt his eyelids constantly struggling. He was extremely sleepy. He lightly exhaled a breath filled with the strong scent of wine and returned to his room on the 2nd floor. He took a bath, sprawled on his bed, and fell into a deep sleep. There's a limited amount of wine. First come, first served. These words caused many people's eyes to narrow. With all sorts of thoughts in their minds, they all retreated. It seems like this wine can only be drunk tomorrow. Rob? The blinding scene of Tian Shuzi was still vivid in their minds. They were not fools and naturally would not make a move on a clothes-stripping maniac like Xiao Bai. Let's go. Tonight's show is over. Let's hurry up and drink tomorrow morning, Yin said as she patted Yi Ziling's head. Then, she pulled the ladder and left the alleyway. Chapter 201. In the pitch-black night sky, 2 crescent moons twinkled and resonated with each other. Around the crescent moons, tens of thousands of stars bloomed brilliantly. The crescent moon's brilliance sprinkled down, covering the earth with a thin veil. In the imperial city, inside a luxurious mansion, Zhao Mushing stood in the courtyard. His body was draped with moonlight, and he had a kind and benevolent countenance. His gentle eyes gazed at the serpent woman, timidly looking back at him. "Did you say that you came to the imperial city to look for Owner Bu?" Zhao Mushing's eyes seemed to be slightly squinting, giving off a benevolent feeling. His body emitted a layer of faint golden brilliance, instantly calming the uneasiness in Yufu's heart. "Yes." Yufu swayed her serpentine tail and slightly shrunk her body. The corners of Zhao Mushing's mouth suddenly curled up, and the gentle expression on his face became even more intense. "Don't be afraid. I am very familiar with Owner Bu. Perhaps I can bring you to him." Yufu froze for a moment. Then her beautiful eyes suddenly lit up. She was completely unfamiliar with the imperial city and had no idea where the store Bufang spoke of was located. If this human before her was telling the truth, then it was indeed a good idea. If she could find Owner Bu, then her father would be saved. The Serpent Men tribe is in the illusory spirit swamp, right? That is very far from here. Why did you come all the way to the imperial city to look for Owner Bu? Zhao Mushing asked. Yufu's heart trembled, and she vigilantly looked at him. Yu Fu's vigilance caused the expression on Zhao Muxing's face to slightly stiffen. His gaze gradually became cold, and the auspicious feeling of golden brilliance on his body also disappeared. Zhao Muxing's eyes slightly narrowed, as if there was a strange brilliance circulating in the depths of his eyes. Yu Fu's gaze slightly slackened, and she couldn't help but say what she needed to say. "Someone, take this serpent woman away and watch her carefully. I didn't expect this serpent woman to be related to Bu Fong. What a pleasant surprise," Zhao Muxing calmly said. Then, several figures stepped into the mansion, dragged serpent woman Yu Fu away, and locked her up. Serpent men were very rare in the Light Wind Empire. Zhao Muxing had originally brought the 3 serpent men back out of curiosity, but he did not expect that he would actually get information about Bu Fong from them. Bu Fong was acquainted with the Nagas? Was Bu Fong from the illusory spirit swamp? The only power in the illusory spirit swamp is the unfathomable White Cloud Villa. Could it be that Bu Fong is a disciple of the White Cloud Villa? But if it's someone from the White Cloud Villa, why would they open a restaurant in the Imperial City? Zhao Muxing thought of many things in an instant. The Mahayana Island was a powerful sect that was second only to the Wuliang Mountains Celestial Arcanum sect among the 10 great sections. Therefore, he knew a lot of secrets. The White Cloud Villa was a very mysterious force. Perhaps only the equally mysterious Celestial Arcanum sect could compare to it. With his hands behind his back, Zhao Muxing paced around the mansion. After pondering for a long time, the corners of his mouth curled up. With a snap of his fingers, a figure appeared from the darkness. It was a bald young monk dressed in black linen. There were 2 rows of scars on his head. One of them was a hideous centipede-like scar that extended from the corner of his eyebrows all the way to the back of his neck. Elder. The young monk had a smile on his face and looked extremely harmless. If it were not for the centipede-like scar, he would have looked rather simple and honest. Shangde, you are the disciple with the highest cultivation level among the disciples of the Mahayana Island. Tomorrow, I will assign you a mission. Go and complete it, Zhao Muxing said to the young monk with a smile. The young monk Shangde said with a smile, "Elder, please tell me. If Shangde can accomplish it, I will not hesitate to go through fire and water." Zhao Muxing pursed his lips. Even though this young monk Shangde was a disciple of the Mahayana Island's Buddhist sect, his mouth was full of lies. The lies that came out of his mouth did not even need to be drafted. Tomorrow, go to Fong Fong's little store and subtly mention the topic of the serpent men to the owner Bu. See how Bu Fong reacts, Zhao Muxing said. The young monk Shangde was taken aback. Fong Fong's little store? The one that has been the talk of the town lately. The one that owns the 5 stripes path understanding tree? Zhao Muxing nodded. The young monk's eyes suddenly lit up. That glint was extremely crafty. Hee, just you wait, Elder. Shangde will go there tomorrow. I've been wanting to visit that store for a long time. The 5 stripes path understanding tree is a true treasure of heaven and earth. Remember, don't fight recklessly. You only need to know how Bu Fong will react, Zhao Muxing said. The young monk nodded with a smile, then turned around and left the courtyard. Zhao Muxing watched as Shangde's silhouette disappeared into the distance. No one knew what he was thinking. "Miss, the group of battle saints has all returned." Obviously, they did not drink the wine. In an inn, Wu Yunbai was sitting cross-legged cultivating. Master Ah Wu leaned against the window, watching the group of battle saints flying by under the moonlight. He could not help but say this to Wu Yunbai. Wu Yunbai did not respond to him, but simply nodded. She had naturally smelled the aroma of the wine, but she could not be bothered to compete with the group of battle saints. Nowadays, the imperial city was in a state of flux, and there were many battle saints. The White Cloud Villa did not send many people, so they could not be considered a powerful force. Naturally, they did not dare to cause too much trouble. She planned to find Bu Fong the next day and ask for the seed of the Monarch Lotus. With the help of the seed, she could break through to 7th grade battle saint. That way, she would have a greater say in the imperial city. When that time came, she would have the confidence to get involved in the ownership of the Five Stripes Path Understanding Tree. Damn, miss, there's a battle saint running naked under the moonlight. Heavens, are all the battle saints in the Imperial City so open-minded? Master Ao Wu exclaimed again. Wu Yunbai closed her eyes tightly, her forehead suddenly filled with black lines. Your sister is cultivating. Can you not be so startled? I almost had a chest ache while cultivating. But a battle saint running naked. Wu Yunbai imagined the scene. TSK. The scene was too beautiful, too painful. Light Wind Empire Imperial Palace, main hall. The lights were faintly lit. Ji Qingxue sat on the dragon throne with a frown. He was naturally aware of the influx of battle saints in the Imperial City, but he couldn't do anything about it. As he listened to the eunuch's report, the corner of his mouth suddenly curled. Honorbu's move was not bad. He intimidated the battle saints who were already restless and gave the Imperial City a chance to ease its tension. The pressure from these battle saints is too strong, and the order of the Imperial City is hard to manage. But I'm really looking forward to Honorbu's new wine tomorrow. Without a doubt, it will be stronger than the ice-hard jade urn wine. This makes my heart itch unbearably, Ji Qingxue said with a bitter face. Sighing, Ji Qingxue stood up from the dragon throne, paced a few steps, and asked the eunuch beside him, How is the ghost chef doing recently? Did he do anything special? Replying to your majesty, the ghost chef Wang Ding has been very quiet for the past month. He stays in the small courtyard prepared by your majesty, cooks, takes a stroll. There are no other special actions, the eunuch said with his head lowered. Ji Qingxue nodded. He hated this ghost chef to the core. If he hadn't spread the news, how would it have caused such a disturbance in the Imperial City? But the other party was a veteran battle saint after all. If he wanted to make a move, the price he would have to pay would be too high. Continue to monitor him and make preparations tomorrow. I'm leaving the palace, Ji Qingxue said. The eunuch immediately raised his head, his face full of astonishment. Early in the morning star leaped out of the horizon. Bufang opened his drowsy eyes. Then his eyes suddenly widened. He sat up from his bed, his expression drowsy and confused. What happened last night? Last night, something seemed to have happened. All right, I drank too much, and I was a little dazed. Bufang mumbled to himself, patted his stiff face, then climbed out of bed and finished washing up. He walked to the kitchen and began his daily training of cutting and carving skills. After drinking 2 cups of Frost-Blaze Path Understanding brew last night, his entire body was dizzy. He only vaguely remembered what happened. It seemed like Xiaobai stripped someone's clothes last night and made them run around naked. As for who it was, he couldn't remember clearly. Since he couldn't remember clearly, he was too lazy to remember. Bufang twirled his knife, then returned it to the knife rack and began cooking the sweet and sour ribs. Opening the door, a faint chill rushed in. It had been more than a month since the spring festival, and the weather was gradually warming up. Opening the store door, Bufang placed the sweet and sour ribs in front of Blackie. After stroking the latter's smooth and untainted hair, Bufang stood up. However, before he could return to the store, a clamor of footsteps came from the alleyway. Bufang was instantly puzzled. Turning around, he saw a group of people majestically approaching. Leading them were 13 boorish and unrestrained burly men. Oh, among those burly men, there was even a pale-faced middle-aged man. Behind the 13 burly men were the majestic 3 barbarians of Ouyang, as well as a few people whose names Bufang couldn't name. The aura on these people was very vigorous. With his sharp eyes, Bufang saw Fatty Jean and the others cowering behind this group of people. At this moment, their faces were filled with confusion. It was so early in the morning. Where did so many experts with powerful auras come from? Couldn't they let him eat breakfast in peace? Chapter 202. Looking at the burly men with powerful auras, Fatty Jean and the others were like aggrieved little girls who were squeezed to the back. Their strength was inferior, and they did not dare to show themselves. They also had unspeakable bitterness in their hearts. Bufong was slightly taken aback. This group of people came really early. Could they all be here for the Frost Blaze Path Understanding brew? Even though it was mentioned last night that it was first come, first served, this group of people had arrived way too early. Owner Bu, good morning. Can we buy the wine now? Ouyang scratched the back of his head as he looked at Bufong with glowing eyes. Last night, with a group of battle saints present, the three barbarians of Ouyang did not even dare to breathe loudly. How could they possibly get their hands on the wine? Therefore, they came early today to buy the wine while the 7th grade battle saints were not paying attention. Hey, did I allow you to buy it first? The 13 bandits stared at the three barbarians of Ouyang. The cultivation level of this group was at the peak of 6th grade battle emperor. How could the three barbarians of Ouyang compare to them? In terms of aura, they were able to suppress the three of them. How infuriating! Since their strength was inferior, the three barbarians of Ouyang could only swallow their anger and remain silent. Owner Bu, I am Huifeng from Majo. Last night, after smelling the aroma of the wine brewed by Owner Bu, I could not bear it and had a sleepless night. This morning, I brought my brothers here to buy the wine. I hope Owner Bu will grant us our wish. Hu Yifeng, the leader of the 13 bandits of Majo, said to Bufong with a gentle smile. Among the 13 bandits of Majo, other than their leader, Hu Yifeng, who was a scholarly man, the other 12 were all burly men. They were quite an oddity. Bufong glanced at them and lightly nodded his head. Then he walked toward the store. As he walked, he said, "Line up and buy the wine in an orderly manner." Line up? The 13 bandits were confused. Did they have to line up to buy something? They were bandits and were already used to robbing people along the way. The concept of lining up did not even exist in their minds. When Bufong suddenly told them to line up, they were confused for a moment. Hurry up and line up according to the seniority of U.S. brothers, Hu Yifeng said with a frown. He took the lead to stand at the entrance and strode into the store. Behind him was the second master, the third master, and so on. When Bufong returned to the store, the solemn voice of the system rang in his mind. The evaluation of the Frost Blaze Path Understanding brew has been completed. Final result. Selling price, 500 crystals per cup. Bufong's stride froze as he sucked in a breath of cold air. 500 crystals per cup. Damn it. So F asterisk king expensive. But I like it. The corners of Bufong's mouth twitched as he stepped into the kitchen again. The moment Hu Yifeng stepped into the store, he instantly felt a peculiar ripple enveloping his entire body. This ripple caused his eyes to suddenly light up. The undulations of the Path Understanding tree could aid one in cultivation. It was extremely helpful to one's comprehension. Hu Yifeng's gaze turned and landed on a small tree sitting on top of an earthy yellow flower pot in the corner of the store. This small tree had already grown to a certain size and was almost as tall as a human. Its branches were brandishing their claws, and its tender green leaves rustled. Waves of surging spirit energy were emitted from it, along with a peculiar Path Understanding ripple. The Five Stripes Path Understanding tree is indeed worthy of its reputation. If I could possess this precious tree and cultivate every day, breaking through to 7th grade battle saint wouldn't be a problem at all. Hu Yifeng's gaze was filled with greed. At this moment, the great bandit's instinct in his heart wriggled once again. However, when he recalled the frightening mechanical puppet in Bufong's store last night, Hu Yifeng decided to forget about it. That mechanical puppet was an existence that could even handle a 7th grade battle saint. His cultivation level was only at the peak of 6th grade battle emperor, so he was definitely no match for it. There was no need for him to seek humiliation and be stripped for nothing. Bufong walked out of the kitchen with a white jade wine jar in his arms. His face was devoid of any expression. He placed a few blue and white porcelain cups on the table and took out a bamboo tube. He placed the white jade wine jar on the table and tapped it with the bamboo tube, drawing Hu Yifeng's attention away from the Five Stripes Path Understanding tree. This is the wine you wanted to buy. It's called the Frost Blaze Path Understanding brew, Bufong calmly said. After Bufong finished speaking, he removed the clay seal of the white jade wine jar. Instantly, a rich and intoxicating wine aroma wafted out. This wine aroma was unbridled and wafted out in an instant. It enveloped the entire alleyway and continued to expand outwards. Just by smelling the wine aroma, the three barbarians of Ouyang couldn't help but salivate. This aroma was simply too mesmerizing. Hu Yifeng's eyes lit up as he gazed passionately at the white jade wine jar. People in their line of work were naturally wine lovers. Wine could boost one's courage and was indispensable in their lives. Wine. Great wine. Great wine. This wine aroma, it's simply superb. Hu Yifeng was full of praises, his face trembling. With regards to such praise, Bufang naturally accepted it gladly. He had expended a great deal of effort on this wine. Naturally, it was a great wine. The menu is behind you, and so is the price. Take a look, Bufang said. There's no need to look. Owner Bu, this jar of wine, I'll buy it. Hu Yifeng waved his hand in a forthright manner and said with great vigor. However, Bufang was still expressionless. He glanced at him and said, You can't afford it. I can't afford it? Hu Yifeng was taken aback. Then, he let out a carefree laugh and said, Owner Bu, don't look down on me. Even though I'm not filthy rich, I can still afford to buy a jar of wine. Even though the wine's aroma was extremely rich, it was still just wine after all. How high could the price go? Hu Yifeng didn't care about this at all. The menu is behind you. Take a look before you speak. Bufang couldn't be bothered to explain anything to him. Hu Yifeng furrowed his brows. He was already a little displeased. I'm just buying a jar of wine. What are you waiting for? However, Hu Yifeng still listened to Bufang's words and turned his head to look at the menu behind him. Hu Yifeng's pupil shrank as he read from the beginning. This menu was simply terrifying. Was this really a menu? Damn, even elixirs sold were not this expensive, right? Wine. Where's the wine? Iceheart Jade, earn wine. No, not this. Frost Blaze Path Understanding Brew. This was it. Hu Yifeng scanned the menu and finally saw the name Frost Blaze Path Understanding Brew. However, when he saw the price, Hu Yifeng's nonchalant gaze froze. Then, his pupils gradually widened and his face looked like he had seen a ghost. Frost Blaze Path Understanding Brew. 1 cup for 500 crystals. 1 cup, 500 crystals, crystals. You're robbing. Hu Yifeng's lips were trembling. Was there anyone who did business like this? Selling a cup of wine for 500 crystals, this was blatant extortion. The 13 bandits of Majo being extorted. This was the biggest joke in the world. Bufang glanced at him, nodded seriously, and said, A cup of wine is sold for 500 crystals. The price is fair, and I am honest with both young and old. It was as if an invisible arrow had pierced Hu Yifeng's heart. The price was fair. I'm not well educated, don't cheat me. Don't make a fuss, Owner Bu. Let's do business properly. Hu Yifeng's expression was a little ugly. This price was a little too expensive. Majo was a barren land to begin with. As bandits, they did not earn much. Sometimes they would not even be able to open their business for an entire month. Spending 500 crystals for a cup of wine was definitely a huge loss. Bufang held the bamboo tube and lightly knocked on the white jade jar of wine. He took a cup and inserted the bamboo tube into the jar, scooping out a tube of light green wine. The sound of the wine bubbling rang out, and the fragrance of the wine became even more intense. Spirit energy was mixed in with the wine fragrance and wrapped around Hu Yifeng's heart like silk. Bufang poured the light green wine into the cup. Dense spirit energy lingered above the cup, and 3 cloud patterns appeared. It was too beautiful to behold. Whether you buy it or not, the wine is here. Bufang gave Hu Yifeng a glance and said seriously, Gulp. The rich wine fragrance made Hu Yifeng's throat move. His alcohol addiction was instantly triggered. You win. Hu Yifeng was furious. This was a naked temptation and robbery. However, he could not resist the temptation of this light green wine. I'm going to buy it. Damn it. Hu Yifeng clenched his fist and casually swung it. Instantly, a large bag of crystals landed on the table. This was almost all of his savings. His heart was bleeding. Bufong's eyebrows twitched. He happily grabbed the crystals and put them into the system's dimensional storage. This wine belongs to you. Please taste it carefully. You might be surprised, Bufong said. Chapter 203. Hu Yifeng carefully picked up the small blue and white porcelain wine cup with 2 fingers, fearing that he would accidentally spill the wine. Every drop of wine was worth a crystal. His heart was bleeding, but his mouth was smacking it incessantly. Saliva dripped down his mouth as he smelled the rich wine fragrance from the cup. He was somewhat impatient. The light green wine was flowing in the exquisite blue and white porcelain cup. The wine was slightly viscous. A faint luster blossomed, and a dense mist filled the air above the cup. The rich wine fragrance was like a small snake, burrowing into his nostrils and opening up all the pores on his body. Just smelling the fragrance of the wine made Hu Yifeng's body tremble. His eyes were filled with an intoxicated look. He stretched out his lips and gently took a sip. The light green wine flowed into his mouth. In an instant, it was like a scorching flame, causing his entire face to wrinkle and his tongue to feel like it was on fire. The scorching heat disappeared as quickly as it came. The moment the wine entered his throat, it became as cold as ice. It almost froze Hu Yifeng to death. However, the refreshing feeling that penetrated his heart caused Hu Yifeng's eyes to widen. As the wine entered his stomach, it instantly exploded 3 times. He involuntarily burped, filling the entire hall with the fragrance of wine. Good wine. Hu Yifeng's refined face was covered with dizziness. The wine's strength was so strong. As the 3 bursts began, the wine rushed straight into his brain, almost causing him to faint. 2 heavens of ice and fire. As expected of the 2 heavens of ice and fire, this wine doesn't seem like a wine that can be found in this world. Hu Yifeng laughed. Raising his head, he drank the rest of the wine in the cup in one gulp. The fiery heat that entered his mouth and the cold taste that flowed down his throat made his entire body feel refreshed. Boom! As the cup entered his stomach, the dense wine fragrance within the blue and white porcelain cup dissipated. There was still a faint spiritual energy fluctuation within it. Hu Yifeng's face was flushed red, and his eyes were overflowing with light. His nostrils exhaled, and spiritual energy constantly gushed out. Hu Yifeng felt dizzy as the world spun around him. Everything in front of him seemed to have become a little blurry. He narrowed his eyes as the rumbling Tao comprehension sound resounded in his ears. The sound was like thunder, as if it had directly resounded in his mind. The second master and third master of the 13 great bandits, who were standing not far from Hu Yifeng, narrowed their eyes when they saw Hu Yifeng's swaying appearance. Big brother. Second master took a step forward and supported Hu Yifeng, who had collapsed after taking a step. Hugging Hu Yifeng's body, the thick smell of alcohol assaulted his nostrils. Old Air's face was immediately filled with a strange expression. Was Big Brother drunk? What the F asterisk CK? Just 1 glass of wine, and he's already drunk. The second master and third master looked at each other and saw the strange look in each other's eyes. Their elder brother's alcohol tolerance wasn't bad, and it was completely unimaginable for him to be knocked out by a single cup. What did you do to our big brother? The disbelieving second master turned his head and angrily glared at Bufong. This brat in front of him must have done something to the wine. Otherwise, why would Big Brother be knocked out by a single cup? Bufong expressionlessly looked at the burly man who turned his head and angrily glared at him. He indifferently said, "As you can see, this guy is knocked out by a single cup." The third master angrily stood up. "You're lying. We are well aware of Big Brother's alcohol tolerance. You brat, don't even think of deceiving us. Tell me, what did you do to Big Brother?" "I said he's drunk. If you don't believe me, just drink a cup," Bufong unhurriedly said. The third master was instantly taken aback. Then he immediately shouted, "Then hurry up and give me a cup. 1 cup for 500 crystals. If you don't believe me, look at the menu behind you." Bufong felt that it was better to first state the price. What? 500 crystals? Why don't you just go rob someone? When the third master heard this, he almost bit his own tongue. 500 crystals for a cup of wine. Did the owner go crazy thinking about crystals? If you don't want to order, then leave the store. If you cause trouble, you know the consequences. Bufong was incomparably calm. The third master clenched his fists. He glanced at the drunk big brother who was lying in the arms of the second master. His face was flushed red, and he was constantly breathing out a rich and intoxicating aroma of wine. His heart tightened. 500 crystals. Damn it. Brothers, lend me some crystals so that I can expose this black-hearted owner's true colors. The third master clenched his teeth and turned around to borrow crystals from his brothers. The second master did not say anything and directly shoved all of the crystals into the third master's hands. The others also handed over their crystals with some hesitation. They were not Hu Yifeng and did not have many crystals. However, after pooling them together, it was still easy for the 12 of them to gather 500 crystals. With a pa sound, the third master slammed the crystals on the table. Bufong poured him a cup of wine. After carefully sizing up the gorgeous wine, he could not hold back the craving in his heart. He raised his head and gulped it down. This was his drinking habit. He was different from Hu Yifeng, who was more refined. He was a burly man, and gulping down a mouthful was a common occurrence. However, this wine was not ordinary wine. Even Bufong blinked in surprise as he looked at the third master, who was stuttering. The third master gulped down the wine in his cup in one gulp. His entire face instantly scrunched up. The feeling of ice and fire instantly burst forth. In addition to the feeling of the 3 marks exploding, the third master was unable to extricate himself. His entire body felt so refreshed that it felt like he was flying. Without a doubt, the third master's face also became flushed. He pointed at Bufong as his eyeballs rolled. Without even taking a step forward, he fell to the ground and fell into a deep sleep. Another one passed out after 1 cup. The remaining members of the 13 bandits were all stunned. This wine actually passed out after 1 cup. Damn it, it was simply too refreshing. They could not help but want to give it a try. However, after knowing the price, they were all scared silly and left the store speechlessly. The 7th master was very conflicted. When he stepped into the store, there was still a lingering fear in his heart. It was here that he was crazily stripped and ran back to the inn naked. He was utterly humiliated. Now that he was standing in this position again, his state of mind was completely different. It was obvious that he did not have any crystals. His crystals had all been lent to the third master. Now, he did not even have a single crystal in his pocket. I'm very sorry, this store does not allow credit. If you do not have any crystals, please leave. Bufong was merciless. The 7th master clenched his teeth in anger. He only wanted to drink a cup of wine. Why was it so difficult? Xiao Bai's chubby figure was faintly discernible in the kitchen. The 7th master's heart instantly turned cold. A scene that was still fresh in his memory appeared in his mind. He immediately turned around and left without hesitation. Causing trouble in the store? What a joke. He did not want to run around naked again. In the end, the 13 great bandits arrived in a grandiose manner. In the end, they only carried 2 useless people back to the inn. How infuriating. They did not even get to drink the wine. The 13 great bandits carried their 2 brothers and walked out of the alleyway. They were greeted by Ni Yin and a sleepy Yi Xiling. What a strong smell of wine. Are they drunk? Ni Yin wrinkled her nose and could not help but murmur. Then, she pulled Yi Xiling and arrived in front of Bufong's store. However, there was a long line in front of the store. The strong smell of wine wafted out from the store, making Ni Yin's heart itch. Yi Xiling, on the other hand, did not feel anything. She did not have a specific concept of wine. This owner Bu is really interesting. Last time, I said that the wine in his store was not good. This time, he made a new wine for me. Could it be that he wants to compete with Dragon's Breath? Ni Yin was extremely excited. This was the first time she saw a wine that could be compared to the old drunkard's Dragon's Breath. The two of them did not cut the line. They obediently lined up behind Fatty Jean and the others. In front of the imperial city's gate of supreme harmony, two figures slowly walked out. Ji Qingxue was wearing a brocade robe and a jade crown on his head. He walked out of the imperial palace with a smile on his face. Beside him was a eunuch who was also wearing a brocade robe. It was Lien Fu, who had aged a lot after not seeing him for a long time. "Uncle Lien, let's go to Ownerbu's store now. Otherwise, we won't be able to make it in time for the good wine," Ji Qingxue said with a smile. Lien Fu pinched his orchid fingers together, nodded, and said with a sharp voice, "As Her Majesty wishes." Chapter 204. Ouyang Xiaoi skipped into the alleyway and was stunned the moment she entered. She blankly stared at the long queue. She saw quite a few familiar faces in the queue. Some were regular customers of the store, while others were unfamiliar faces. "I was wondering why I didn't hear your snoring so early in the morning. So you guys have come to the smelly boss's place to secretly drink." The moment Ouyang Xiaoi stepped into the store, she saw three burly and familiar figures. Who else could it be other than her three foolish brothers? The three barbarians of Ouyang turned their heads to look at Ouyang Xiaoi. Their faces were scrunched up, and they looked extremely wronged. Ouyang Xiaoi was immediately startled. "Brother, can you not scare people in broad daylight? Ownerbu, this wine is really expensive." The eldest brother, Ouyang Zhen, pursed his lips and felt extremely wronged. All the crystals the three of them had were not even enough to buy a cup of wine. This was simply ridiculous. They never expected that not only was the wine brewed by Bu Fong ridiculously expensive, it was also sold by the cup. How much was there in one cup? It was not even enough to fill the gaps between one's teeth. "Xiaoi, my good sister, can you lend me some crystals?" Ouyang Wu shamelessly moved closer to Ouyang Xiaoi, causing the latter to immediately become vigilant. Ouyang Xiaoi's eyes widened as she suspiciously glanced at the menu. After scanning through it, she discovered the newly added menu at the bottom. Frost Blaze Path Understanding Brew, 1 cup / 500 crystals. Ouyang Xiaoi was dumbfounded. 500 crystals per cup? Did the smelly boss make a mistake? What kind of wine could cost 500 crystals per cup? The Ice Heart Jade Urn wine could not even compare to a tenth of it. No wonder her three brothers wanted to borrow crystals from her. "My good sister, Xiaoi, this wine is really too mesmerizing. If I don't drink it, I definitely won't be able to sleep tonight. I won't even have the strength to walk." Ouyang Di cried miserably. The scene of three burly men complaining to a little lowly with snot and tears streaming down their faces was indeed too beautiful. Ouyang Xiaoi patted the cheeks of her three brothers and took out some crystals from her pouch, handing them over to her three brothers. Ouyang Xiaoi was the treasure of the Ouyang clan, so the thing she lacked the least was crystals. "Thank you, little sister." Ouyang Zhen took the crystals and was immediately overjoyed. Adding the crystals from the three of them, they had a total of 500 crystals, enough to buy a cup of wine. Bu Fong gently scooped with his bamboo tube as the sound of the flowing wine echoed throughout the store. As the fragrance of the wine spread out, the three barbarians of Ouyang were completely intoxicated. "Here, your Frost Blaze Path Understanding Brew." Bu Fong carefully handed the blue and white porcelain cup to Ouyang Zhen. Ouyang Zhen took it carefully, looking serious and funny. Ouyang Zhen held his wine cup while Ouyang Wu and Ouyang Di stared at him eagerly. The three of them gathered to one side and discussed, "There's only 1 cup of wine. Each of us will take a sip. No one is allowed to drink more." Ouyang Wu and Ouyang Di quickly nodded. Immediately, Ouyang Zhen narrowed his eyes. He raised his wine cup and took a small sip, drinking exactly 1/3 of it. After drinking, he was completely intoxicated and was unable to extricate himself. Ouyang Wu took the wine cup from his hand and deeply inhaled the fragrance of the wine. He also took a sip. The explosive fragrance of the wine burst forth in his mouth, causing all the hairs on his body to stand on end. Ouyang Di took the wine cup and poured the last bit of wine in the cup into his mouth. The scene of the three burly men carefully drinking this small cup of wine was extremely miserable. The scene seemed to have become a lot more desolate at this moment. However, after drinking this cup of wine, the expressions on the three men's faces changed drastically. Their eyes suddenly widened, and the energy within their bodies actually fluctuated. None of them passed out because the three of them drank one cup. Therefore, none of them were drunk, just a little tipsy. The three barbarians of Ouyang had just broken through to 5th grade Battle King around the spring festival after their dedicated cultivation. Now that this cup of wine entered their stomachs, they felt the true energy vortexes within their bodies spinning rapidly, and their true energy seemed to be boiling. Their faces flushed red as they walked out of the store. They immediately sat cross-legged in the alleyway and began to cultivate. A faintly discernible path-understanding note was circulating in their ears. Following this path-understanding note, they felt as though many of the problems they faced during cultivation were easily solved. The people queuing up were astonished as they looked at the three brothers who were sitting cross-legged on the cold bricks of the alleyway. The energy within their bodies surged and continuously strengthened. That appearance was as though they had consumed elixirs. Many people's eyes immediately lit up. Could a cup of wine help one break through? Was this for real? A cup of wine actually had an effect comparable to an elixir? And Ayan's eyes lit up even more, and her heart was burning with passion. Not only Ayan, but the others also saw the effects of this wine. Immediately, everyone was a little astonished. Help one break through? This wine was awesome. However, when these people stepped into the store and saw the exorbitant prices, their faces became gloomy and ashen. Most of them could not afford it, or they did not have so many crystals on them. There were also people who ransacked their pockets and finally gathered 500 crystals to buy a cup. After drinking it, there was no doubt that they passed out in one cup. When they fell to the ground, they were taken away by their acquaintances. Fatty Jean and the others were not here to drink. They were really here to eat. However, it was obvious that Bufong did not have the time to cook for them. They were not in a hurry and sat to the side, watching this rare scene of wine being sold with great interest. Bufong glanced at the white jade wine jar that had lost half of its liquid. He slightly furrowed his brows and raised his head to say to the crowd, "Frostblaze Path Understanding Brew. There are only 5 cups left for sale today." 5 cups? And Ayin was slightly taken aback. She did not expect that this wine was not only sold by the cup, but also had a freaking limited quantity. However, so be it. It's my turn anyway. The corners of Yan's mouth curled up. She walked in front of Bufong and opened her red lips slightly. She giggled and said, "Owner Bu, why did you think of brewing such a good wine?" Bufong looked at Yan's devastatingly beautiful face and slightly furrowed his brows. He did not choose to answer her question. Instead, he glanced at the Frostblaze Path Understanding Brew in the white jade wine jar and took a deep breath. "You drink this cup of wine. It's free." Bufong scooped up a cup of wine and handed the blue and white porcelain cup to Ayan. Ayan was stunned. Ouyang Xiaoyi was stunned. Yi Xiling, who was standing behind Ayan, was also stunned. Almost everyone was slightly stunned. What did he mean? What did he mean? Owner Bu, you can't give up your integrity just because this woman is pretty. Why is it free? Ayan unceremoniously took the wine cup that Bufong handed to her. Her red lips exuded a mesmerizing luster. She curled her lips slightly and narrowed her eyes. She knew that Bufong was not the kind of person who would be tempted by beauty. For him to let her drink for free, there was definitely something wrong with him. You should have drunk Dragon's Breath before. Then have a good taste of this wine. After you've finished drinking, tell me which is better, Frostblaze Path Understanding Brew or Dragon's Breath. Bufong said seriously as he looked at Ayan. Competing in wine? Ayan was slightly taken aback. She did not expect that the reason Bufong would treat her to a wine competition. Moreover, it was Dragon's Breath. Could it be that she had unintentionally mentioned that the Ice Heart Jade Urn wine could not compare to the Dragon's Breath, and Owner Bu had taken it to heart? Honorbu could not be that bored. Perhaps brewing the Frostblaze Path Understanding brew was just a coincidence. Yin thought with certainty. However, Bufong had really brewed the Frostblaze Path Understanding brew for the sake of competing with the Dragon's Breath. If Yin knew Bufong's thoughts, she would definitely not know whether to laugh or cry. After hearing Bufong's words, Yin's curiosity was piqued. Honorbu seemed to have a lot of confidence in this wine. Her slender and fair fingers that were like beautiful jade pinched the blue and white porcelain cup. She brought her nose close to the cup and took a slight sniff. The fragrance of the wine filled her nostrils and was incomparably intoxicating. Her pink tongue licked around her red lips, mesmerizing and teasing. She lifted the wine cup and took a sip. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.